welcome to this Feng Shui Skills Development Day hosted by the Feng Shui Society. I'm Gina Lazenby, I'm the chair of the Feng Shui Society, and I'm wishing you all a lovely welcome this morning. I'm going to presume that everybody on the call is in the time zone of morning, M-O-R-N-I-N-G, and whatever time anybody is listening to this. We've got a wonderful day planned for us. It's not a whole day. It's a nice segment of Saturday. So we're starting in the morning and we're going on till after lunch. And we've got some wonderful presentations for you. And I thought I would just start off by way of introducing the day. And I put down in a moment of, I don't know what, but the idea of self-care. I think it came up because the work that we do in helping people with their homes is really important work, and it's getting more important. And I really felt that self-care was something to flag up for us to attend to. I forgot to put on a poll, but I'm wondering how many people here are practicing Feng Shui practitioners, and who is. So put your hand up if you're a practicing Feng Shui practitioner. Well, not everybody's on the screen. Okay, and put your hand up. Let's just see if anybody here is just an enthusiast who loves Feng Shui and has studied it, but not necessarily a practitioner. Okay, one or two of you. Okay, I'm going to presume the majority. I can't see everybody, not all on the screens. So I'm going to speak to that. You know, we're all out helping people. But I just wanted to flag up that there's a tremendous amount of suffering in the world. And I'm going beyond the kind of the current war situation. There is a lot of discontent. We've had a couple of years where fear has been projected enormously in all the media, and it's, you know, I think it's taken its toll on a lot of people, particularly you know, at home and in the workplace. And I don't know whether you've been hearing of something called the Great Resignation. The Great Resignation is a wave that's been in America and also here of people who are dissatisfied with work and opting out of potentially large salaries and deciding to do something else. So there is a gap in many work areas that, you know, many companies are struggling to bring people, keep people. So this sense of dissatisfaction where people are valuing more quality of life, particularly after the 2 years that we've had where people have spent a lot more time at home. You know, there's a whole group of people who are struggling financially as well, more so than before. And, you know, another thing is that the words trauma and mental health and vulnerability, much more in the language now than they ever were before. You didn't really hear them, and now common parlance to talk about that. People have had traumatic experience, suffering trauma, or, you know, as so many people have, but are willing to talk about it now. Mental health and emotional issues and stress are all things we can talk about more easily. And I think we have a tremendous privilege in Feng Shui to, when we're invited into people's homes, to help them. And I see the need is greater and greater. The home is changing. It used to be, I mean, if I think back nearly 30 years ago when I started out, I'm sure you remember this, people lived at home and largely went out to work and school, and homes were empty during the day. And then people came home late afternoon and evening and then had home life. And now so much more is happening. It could be that everybody's working from home. It could be, we just had 2 years where, you know, everybody was working from home, and kids were being homeschooled. So the nature of home is changing. I'm not sure the design of homes are changing. So I think we're being called on to do more for people. Their needs are greater. We're called on to do more. And it's even more important that when we go in, that our own energy is really the best it can be. Because, you know, back in the day, Feng Shui masters were Qi masters. You know, they would arrive in a property, and sometimes their very presence changed the energy of the home. And that's the idea of mastering tree, mastering energy. So we've got to be, we have to elevate ourselves. We have to be the best that we can be. And yet we're human too, going through the same things that everybody else is going through. So I'm wondering in what way you are all taking care of yourselves. I don't know whether you're looking for additional ways of support that you haven't looked at before. I think that when you see a client in their home and look at the arrangements of the house, you get the opportunity to see their habits, you see behind the scenes, you see what's really going on, you see how they're nourishing themselves or not, what they're eating potentially, and what is our remit? How much do we do for people? I think it's an interesting question. So I'm not showing up today with answers for all of these. I just want to flag up that this is an area for us to think about is there more that we can do for people? Is there more that we need to do for people? Therefore, is there more that we need to do for ourselves? And if the need is greater out there, is that putting a stress on us in terms of doing a lot of work, or in terms of when we show up, is more being asked of us, is more being demanded? And the energy of the world at the moment, from whatever way you look at it, is crazy. It's crazy energy. There's a lot of things happening astrologically. There are big things happening. There's a massive increase in solar flares. There's big shifts in the Earth's magnetic field, and we're sandwiched in between those energies. And what's that doing to us? So when we show up for other people, we really have to make sure that we are really supporting ourselves. And I would be interested to know, maybe you want to put in the chat the things that you're doing more of to support yourself. I mean, for myself, I've always been a healthy cook, and I'm taking my study deeper and studying food energetics and more traditional Chinese medicine to do more nourishing food, to take care of my family and my family's greater needs and my own as I get older. We all age. I'm getting older, and I'm thinking, in what way my diet needs to change. The tapping, EFT, I've done before, and now I'm making it a daily practice rather than something I forget about. And then I'm looking at high-tech solutions of machines that support optimizing brain waves. There's all sorts of things that one can do that I'm also looking at. So I'm interested to know in what way you're perhaps taking care of yourself, and is there some way the society, us as a community, can be of support beyond the Feng Shui knowledge. We've got a session today about marketing a business, but I think it's interesting to look about how can we support ourselves. So that's the conversation I wanted to have. Joan's put her hand up. Joan? Joan, do you want us to unmute? Joan, did you want to speak, or did you have a hand up for? Okay. So Madhusudan, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Ayurveda, yes. We lost Joan. Okay, so you're looking at Ayurveda. I shall also be studying that along with my food energetics. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to bring. You may not have any immediate comments, but if you want to, the invitation is there. If you want to think about that, if it's an issue, then send us an email or make a comment here. Sorry. Yeah, meditation and Qigong. Qigong is amazing. It's wonderful. I remember, I think it was with Christian. Christian, when we went with, were you with Roger when we went to China? And the Qigong, there were two Qigong masters who were our teachers. Yeah. They looked like teenagers and they were in their 60s. They were unbelievable.
I still have their videos.
I'd love to see them. Their skin was baby soft, and that was really, it shows you can tell as people age, if they're looking after themselves. Energetically, because it shows in the face. Somatic yoga, yeah, lovely. That's what I was doing. Yoga's great as well. Yeah, regular massage. I'm going on retreat on Monday to Broughton Hall. It's a fantastic estate near where I live. And literally, my holiday from spending time overseas, my holiday is 5 minutes down the road, in the stately home there, swimming in the pool. Okay. Well, lovely. Well, okay. We're going to start with our sessions now, but that's what I wanted to. I don't know whether you found that of value, of interest, but I do really think it's important for us to take care of ourselves and not be stressed, because we need to show up with a greater access to energy and be calm for the clients that we work with. So I'm going to move on now to Jan. I'm going to introduce and hand over to Jan. Jan Chizik, really been here back in the day, Jan, one of the original members of the founders and members of the Feng Shui Society. And he's been involved in Feng Shui for over 40 years. My goodness, Jan, that is a long time to be in this. Feng Shui, Vastu Shastra, interior design. He's also an environmental psychologist and he's working on his PhD. So really looking forward to him completing that. And his passion is about the integration of science and wisdom, ancient wisdom, modern science, which is just wonderful. Transpersonal psychology, consciousness and human potential. So really all the things he studies makes him just the perfect person to do this talk on unconscious bias. And Jan, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you see my slide presentation?
Beautifully, yes, indeed.
Okay, excellent. So my name is Jan and I'm biased. That's a joke. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, good. So
sorry, I've just put my microphone back on. We can hear you. Could do with a bit more volume, but we can hear you.
Okay, I'll just get closer to the camera. Right. So just a quick overview of the talk. So why do we need to look at the unconscious bias, especially in Feng Shui practice, but also in personal lives? What is bias? Different types of unconscious cognitive biases. And then kind of go into solutions, pattern recognition, information gathering questions, lots of examples from Feng Shui practice. And I kind of finish with checklist, summary, and then Q&A. But feel free to write your questions in the chat box as we go. Right, so why is it important? So I've got a good quote from Donald Rumsfeld, who famously said, there are known knowns, the things that we know. We also know that there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things that we do not know, but also unknown unknowns, the ones that we don't know, we don't know. And that's an area of study in unconscious bias, because most people don't even realize that they have them. So we're going to explore that in the Feng Shui context, but also in generally for making decisions in your personal and professional lives. So Feng Shui is a good servant, but a bad master. And unfortunately, a lot of people put their life into Feng Shui, and that causes all kinds of false problems and Feng Shui biases. So obviously, put Feng Shui into your life is just a tool. It's just another way of looking at this world. Yeah, and obviously, there's a lot of bias coming from different places, but in Feng Shui, there's a lot of bias and superstitions and kind of false problems that I'm going to talk about. So obviously, you're going to become a better critical thinker if you are aware of your unconscious cognitive biases. And also, it will help you to take your Feng Shui, or whatever you're doing, to the next level of operation. So you get better, quicker, and longer-lasting results, because you're going to use more kind of evidence-based practices, and you're going to make better decisions. So that's these are the benefits. So what is unconscious bias? So the different names: unconscious, implicit, cognitive bias. Different authors kind of make slight distinctions, but it boils down to just biases. Yeah. But the classical definition of cognitive bias is that cognitive bias or thinking or brain bias are systemic errors in thinking that affect decisions and judgments that people make. And they can affect you in different ways. Later, I'll show you some books that I recommend. And one of the books is that unconscious bias can get you killed, actually. So it's a serious subject. So, but generally speaking, biases are tendencies, assumptions, perceptions, opinions, limited kind of views, beliefs, ways of thinking about the world. And that some things, ideas, people are better or worse than others. And usually they're unconscious. That's why most people sort of stick to this term, unconscious bias, but some of them are conscious. And you're probably aware of them as well, but maybe you haven't thought about them in that kind of framework. So I want to make a distinction between biases and preferences because they are different, although there's an overlap. So preferences are, like if you like, I prefer tea over coffee, yeah? And that's based on your experience. You tried tea, you tried coffee for a period of time, and you decided that actually you prefer coffee or tea. It doesn't matter. But biases, usually unconscious, are just kind of unconscious opinions, and they're not based on reason or actual experience. So for example, all men are bad. That's definitely a bias because obviously we don't know all men and we haven't experienced with all men. Yeah. So, and obviously these kind of two things, preference and bias, can affect each other. So one causes the other or the other way around. And kind of sometimes people start with the bias and becomes a preference. So sometimes people start with a preference and can become a bias. Yeah. I'll give you some examples later, but so it's a useful thing to think, oh, is it, am I biased or just my preference because of the experiences? So it's a useful way of thinking about the whole subject. So why are we biased? So the bias, most biases are kind of learned defaults. We learn them because of the upbringing, society, all kinds of things, yeah? And then they can become dominant in, in certain domains, social, personal, business, or environment, or kind of general mindset. But I think that behind the general biases, there's a fear. Obviously, there are desire as well. There's, behind all the things that we're doing, there's fears and desires. Kind of our lives kind of oscillate between those two things, fears and desires. And Gina mentioned that there's quite a bit of fear in recent years. Yeah, but when there is other, there is fear, and that's from Upanishad. So whenever there is something different, people kind of might feel different. But some biases are inborn. And I'm not going to go into kind of the history of how they've sort of studied it, but some bias can be inborn as well. So obviously, you want to become aware of different kind of defaults, how you think, because that can affect how you make decisions and how you pick information that suits your needs at the time, because things can change, and your biases will change as well. And also, you kind of think in terms of kind of bias bubbles. So you have one particular type of bias, and you were because this group of people think like that. And maybe you want to join them because of the bias that you like, or maybe you want to avoid them. Yeah. So, so that's kind of general awareness of different types of kind of group of biases will help you to kind of maneuver between them. Yeah. And obviously, ultimately, you want to have a kind of anti-bias mindset. And that's kind of the purpose of this workshop, to kind of instill some of the principles and thinking. But basically, it's about questioning. Yeah? Once you learn to question things, then you'll be able to see whether they come from bias or not. And the kind of useful thing, especially if before you're making any important decision, is pausing. Just pause and think about it. Yeah, don't rush, especially if it's an important decision. So obviously, there are different types of biases and different groups of biases. Some domains have less or more bias. So physics, maths, or kind of core sciences have less bias because, you can't have a bias, about maths, for example. 2 + 2 = 4. People accept that as a fact, yeah? Or, water, H2O2, or physics, electricity. Or facts like, general facts like Paris is the capital of France. There's no bias, really. I mean, today it is. We don't know in the future where it's going to be, but at the moment, that's a fact. Yeah. But once you move to an area where there are people, social issues, science, health, politics, climate, etc., anything, then there's more bias. Actually, that creates humans, interactions, opinions create a lot of bias. Yeah. So I could mention a few words, keywords, and this video would be banned on YouTube, yeah, on Google. So, for example, Paris is a romantic or dirty city. It's just bias, yeah. So you see this picture on the right, and it's a famous picture, and it's presented in a particular way. Spoiler: it was staged. You see, just knowing, you might think, oh, and I've had clients who thought it was a real picture, and they like it. They put it in kind of, to enhance the relationship. But once I said, sorry, but it was staged, that's the fact, yeah, then suddenly it changes how they see this picture. Interesting, yeah? So you can change your way of looking things depending on the facts, yeah? But I still like it. It doesn't matter, even knowing that it was primed and set up, but it's still a nice picture. It tells you something, yeah? And it's kind of a story, if you like. So you can, your mind will frame experiences in different ways, depending on your memory, literally depending on your memory and expectations. So Google is biased. So let's give you some examples. So definitely it senses most of the information and has dominated 9% of the search market. Yeah, I'll give you some alternatives to Google, but it's a useful thing to think about your bias as a kind of social, personal censorship. Yeah, so so that's another way of looking at your bias. So in Feng Shui, we have lots of kind of superstitions and kind of socially or culturally specific mindset. So for example, number 4 has kind of bad reputation, basically because in Chinese, number 4 sounds similar to the word death. Yeah. So, but it's interesting enough, I had clients who literally rejected a perfectly good house just because of one criteria, that it had number 4 on it. And they were not Chinese. So that wouldn't actually affect them. You know, we don't have a similar negative association. If I was from Chinese background and I didn't like the word death, I had problems with this concept, maybe I would avoid, you know, a house with number 4, or just remove it, you know. So in this case, this is a picture. Somebody tried to rectify this problem with number 4 by painting red, because red color is good. Number 4 is bad, but red color is good. But maybe you can see, but it's on the left side, the lamp is not working. They forgot about fix the lamp. I think that's more important. So, and obviously, if you're exposed to the same information again and again and again, you start to think that it's true, but it might not be. So a lot of people kind of avoid, you know, in kind of Eastern countries, hotels don't have the number 4 floor, or the number 4 doesn't appear on doors and so on. And you know, people go to hospitals, they avoid number 4, bad, you know. So again, so it's a culture-specific bias. And toilets, notoriously, toilets have bad reputation in Feng Shui. If you look at books on Feng Shui, they always say toilets are bad. You know, I had so many clients calling me and asking, "Oh my God, I read, you know, in this book." You know, I'm not going to mention the name of the book. It won't be fair on Lillian too. And that toilets are bad. You know, and I start questioning them. You know, what happens? It's like, you know, did you have any problems before you read the book? Not really. Once I read the book, it gave me a lot of false problems. So you need to be aware of that as well, that, you know, not everything that is written is true. And obviously directions, it's a big thing in Feng Shui, directionology. So facing good or bad directions can affect your performance. I'll give you some examples later. And astrology. So then we have the interpretation, prediction, bias, and so on. Now, just for the record, I'm not against classical Feng Shui, astrology, all those things. Yeah, I look at them and evaluate them, and I see what's good about it and why people have that sort of perceptions. But if it works for you, by all means, use it. Yeah, but also it can give you false problems. So you need to be aware of that. So another example. Mirrors in bedrooms are bad. A lot of books on Feng Shui state that. And the kind of classical view of that is that Oriental people thought that, you know, when you leave, when you fall asleep, your spirit leaves your body. And if it sees yourself in a mirror, or if it's coming back to the state of wakefulness, it can get lost in the mirror. So that's kind of a slightly superstitious, but maybe there's something in it, yeah. So we don't know really. Maybe they have perceptions that it might be true, but this, you know, when you look at evidence, there's no evidence in terms of the research, yeah. But evidence-based Feng Shui suggests that, you know, light obviously can affect melatonin production. So if you've got lots of kind of light reflecting objects like mirrors, that will affect how your brain works, and it will affect your sleep. So there is something in it. So maybe it was just kind of observation start, but then they came up with this explanation about the spirits. We still don't know. I actually personally believe that actually your spirit, your soul kind of leaves your body. But you know, we don't really have a study on that yet. Yeah. And obviously, you know, psychologically or kind of physically, seeing your reflection in the mirror at night can startle you. So it's not a good idea, generally speaking. Yeah, but during the day, it's not a problem. So most people will cover the mirrors for the night, and as long as it's not reflected, it's not a big deal. Yeah. But in the case of this picture, a bigger problem I can see is the metal bed. That will definitely create some problems because it can amplify electrosmog, and that definitely will affect your sleep. So the two problems here in this. But the wallpaper, again, that's preference. I wouldn't be biased about this, but whether I like it or not doesn't matter. If the client likes that sort of wallpaper, it's not my problem. So there are lots of different types of biases. There are over 100 biases. Yeah. So I'm going to pull out a few that are kind of important. So confirmation bias. So preferential noticing, seeking, and recalling information that confirms your mindset, cognitive models, preconceptions, and beliefs. So, you start to see whatever you want to see, you start to see more of that in your world. And I'll give you some examples later. Congruence bias, so testing ideas by seeking evidence that supports rather than refutes them. So instead of looking at the kind of competing theories or opposite or different evidence, you're just looking for evidence to support your bias. Fundamental attribution error. So it's a tendency to place blame on external events. And unfortunately, that's quite a big problem in Feng Shui. A lot of people blame their problems, personal, professional, whatever, on physical environments for the physical stress. And to some extent, it's true, because sometimes it is the case, but most of the time it's not actually. Yeah? So the environment will affect you and will kind of prime you for certain things, but it's not the only thing. You can't say that, environment made you to do something. Yeah. I mean, in some cases, maybe, but it's an error in thinking. And clustering illusion, seeing kind of phantom patterns in random events. And I'll give you some examples later. So first step, awareness of the problem. Once you know that we're all biased, and it's very difficult, we'll talk about that later. It's very difficult to get rid of all the biases, but recognize your bias and start managing, start the biasing process. So less bias is obviously better than lots of bias. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. So I'm biased, and I'm biased against Microsoft. And the reason is that I actually never used Microsoft all my life. From the beginning, when I got my first computer, it was a Mac computer. And obviously I used PCs from time to time, but I don't really have a lot of experience of using Microsoft. So if I had a lot of experience, like using it more or less the same time as I'm using Macintosh computers, then that will become a preference. But at the moment, I don't have much experience in using Microsoft, and I've used it and I didn't like it, and could be kind of preference. But so that's definitely my bias. Yeah, and I recognize it, and I can live with it. It's not going to harm me. It's and obviously I've got more friends who use Macintosh computers than friends who use PCs. Obviously more people use PCs, yeah, but I kind of gravitate to people because we exchange information how to use it better. Then do meta search for things. So seek definitely information from different sources to make some kind of generalization. Yeah, talk to others, have diverse group of friends. Listening to the opposite point of views. Learn how to read scientific papers. A lot of people are kind of frightened of scientific papers for no reason, yeah? And especially need to focus on methodology and quality. And obviously statistics, yeah, can be frightening, but there's some good books now. You read 1 or 2 good books about how to read scientific papers, how to understand science, how to understand statistics, and literally in no time you'll be on top of this subject. You're not going to be probably a statistician because you don't want to be, but you understand how it works. So you can pick up better quality research. It's not about the amount of research, because there's lots of research papers on certain things, but the bad research, the methodology is bad, it's not well designed, etc. So the quality of the research is more important than the content. And obviously top kind of scientific papers are about that. Most top scientific papers will reject just the first draft of research. 95% of research that comes their way is rejected, just almost automatically. So, and also that's obviously you're going to use Google, but for research, you use Google Scholar, much better. I'm sure you've heard this phrase, garbage in, garbage out. If you ask the wrong question, Google will get lots of irrelevant information. Now Google gives you suggestions. You probably don't remember. A long time ago, Google didn't give that option, and they realized that people were not very good at search. But Google Scholar is useful for scientific research. And there's a new search called pre-search, which I recommend you try. And it promises that it's better than Google. It's more objective. It's more diverse. And obviously, you can use all the other search engines within that pre-search search. And plus, you can get paid for searching on it. So you have to register and you get points, and you can kind of, you're making kind of money in tokens, if you like. So the key thing is question things. So learn how to ask good questions. And that's the next section of this presentation. So one of the checklists is learn how to recognize patterns, because patterns will help you to make better decisions. And the first one is a very simple, 3 words to remember: and, or, not. That's the most basic algorithm. All the algorithms that run all the technology, including your computers now, are based on obviously very complex algorithms. Algorithm is like a recipe. Think about algorithms. So, you've got an algorithm for making a cake. Yeah. So you've got a steps and a certain things. So those 3 words, and, or, not, is like a gatekeeper. So, you're looking at information, and then there's and you start to connect to other bits of information, or you look for alternative, or not. That's not the case, not relevant. So those 3 words kind of, and we do that automatically. We just maybe not consciously, but we do it. We're doing it this sort of algorithmic decision making naturally. Obviously, when you're looking at information, you're going to analyze it, but also you're going to synthesize this to make some generalization. Yeah. So you're breaking things down, but then putting them together in different ways. Yeah. And obviously, there's a difference between observation and interpretation. So if you look at this picture on the right, there's a lady, and she's leaning forward, and she's trying to figure out the numbers. Yeah. So the interpretation will be: there's a lady. It's a fact. She's wearing a suit. Looks like a woman, and she's leaning forward, and that's observation. Yeah. And maybe that's why she can't see the numbers. Yeah. But interpretation would be, oh, she's not very bright. She should look back. She should stand back to see it. Yeah, that would be interpretation. Yeah. So, as Feng Shui consultants or enthusiasts, we need to look what's factual, and switching on the observation mode is more important than kind of interpretation. You can look at that later, but don't start to mix the observation and interpretation, because you'll get confused. And kind of basic pattern recognition questions: what changes the most? What is exaggerated the most? What is repeated the most? What is missing? Yeah. So, obviously in your environment, you have, places where there's a lot of change: staircases, front and back, inside and outside. All the areas, different rooms have changed. Yeah. So you look at those spaces, and that inform you about, the general kind of energy flow or whatever you're looking for. What is exaggerated? Too much of something, the whole place is white, or the whole place is made of wood, or whatever. Too much of one element or the other, that will inform you about certain things. And what is repeated? People repeat things, especially kind of representing things, what's happening in life. I've seen it many times that single people have a lot of pictures of themselves walking on an empty beach, or on a desert, and they're surprised that they're single. Obviously that's a representation of the state, but also it primes them to, and kind of hooks them or locks them in this pattern. So by changing the images, they prime themselves for a different outcome. And obviously what is missing, and I'm going to give you an example in a minute. But generally, it's looking for difference and sameness. Yeah. And our brains are amazing. There's a quote here. So we have 300 million pattern recognizers in the neocortex. We're designed to recognize patterns. You wouldn't be able to listen to me if you didn't recognize the pattern of sounds that sound like English with a Polish accent. So an example of kind of this missing, what's missing. Yeah. And also there's a Dunning-Kruger bias, thinking we know more than we do and underestimating what we don't know. So the client, and she had a particular sleep problem. She had only one problem, and her problem was she had problems falling asleep. She didn't have a problem sleeping, but she had a problem sleeping. So it would take her sometimes 1 hour, 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours to fall asleep. So before I came, she asked two kind of classically oriented practitioners, and they tried different things. They thought maybe the position of the bed wasn't aligned properly, so they moved her bed around. She didn't like it. She was very neat. She had a very nice, neat place. Everything was organized, kind of slightly symmetrical. And, you know, it messed up her interior design of her bedroom when she had to move the bed. She didn't like it. It didn't work, actually. And they check astrology, why it was happening this particular time, and so on. And still no improvement. So she called me, and I start asking questions. Yeah. So the first question I asked is there time where you don't have this sleep problem? So what's missing? Yeah. So she said, oh, when I'm going to sleep from Friday to Saturday, I usually don't have a problem. I kind of quickly can fall asleep. So I thought, just work day. Maybe it's kind of work related. So I said, do you like your work? And she said, no, I love my work. I'm very good at this. She was very proud of this. She was a PA, and she was well paid. So I'm very organized. And so I'm thinking maybe she brings work to her personal life, and maybe that's why she's processing before she goes to sleep. And I said, do you bring work from home? No, 5:30 I finished because I'm so organized. I never bring work. So, So then I asked her, run me through your evening. What do you actually do? I said, well, have you noticed? I'm very organized. Everything is neat. Everything has its own place. So before I go to work next day, I organize my clothes. So I know what I'm going to wear. I have a bath. I wash my hair. And I maybe read a bit, some kind of inspiration, a novel, whatever. And then I can't fall asleep. So already check lots of different things in her environment. So she actually read my blog about bedrooms. And she already, she was switching the Wi-Fi. She had a foam mattress. She didn't have all kinds of things she was doing. But still, she couldn't fall asleep easily. Yeah? And then I said, do you dry your hair after you've washed? I said, yes, of course. Yeah? And that was the problem, the hair dryer. So her hair dryer was zapping her brain with electrosmog and inhibiting melatonin production. Now, it's not universal. A lot of people who dry their hair have problems switching, but in her case, she was kind of hyper electrosensitive to this particular frequency. So she changed the habit and her problem disappeared. She then later looked at different hair dryers that have low radiation. Some of them were better than others, but she still kind of had to kind of wash her hair in the morning. Yeah? And so the point I'm making here is that questioning, it doesn't matter whether it was classical Feng Shui or intuitive or evidence-based Feng Shui, it doesn't matter. Questioning got me to the right answer. Yeah? And then obviously I wrote a blog about it because I realized I knew about it because I knew about that, but it wasn't obvious in the environment. Her hair dryer wasn't lying there, so I could notice and I could be, oh, maybe it's a hairdresser. So I had to go through this questioning process to find out what was wrong. And even if you don't know much about Feng Shui, you can get that through right questioning. If it wasn't working, obviously it worked. If it wasn't working, I'll keep going. I would find the real answer to that problem. Yeah? So it's not just that we don't know what we don't know, but also we don't really know how to ask good questions. Kind of be like a kind of Sherlock Holmes. So I put my Sherlock Holmes hat, and that's how I figure out. And actually, there's a book about that. I'm going to share that with you later. So there's a little joke here. So, dude, why did you try to rob the bank without even a mask? Oh, but I had put lemon juice on my face to make me invisible. And that's the Dunning-Kruger effect. Yeah, and it's a joke, but in real life, there were similar cases. There was one guy who robbed the bank, and he demanded the money. He had a mask, but he demanded the money down his demands that I want money or I'll kill you, on a piece of paper that he pulled out from his bag. He didn't check that piece of paper on the other side had his bank details and his address. They caught him in 2 minutes flat. So that's that example. And there's lots of other examples where people rob banks and they make stupid mistakes, basically. So random events, and there's a name for that, apophenia. Apophenia is kind of spontaneous perception of connections and meaningfulness in unrelated phenomena. So sometimes there's random events, and sometimes there is a pattern. So in this case, there is a pattern. So if you look at those shapes in red, they kind of look normal, but actually there is a pattern. Yeah. So sometimes there's no pattern, but sometimes there is pattern. So you kind of start to look at those things in those concepts. So if you haven't seen this picture, to most people it look like a landscape with 2 horses, 1 rider, and some people already see a pattern. Are you seeing faces?
Yes.
Yeah. So some people see face. Maybe you've seen this picture before. So some people say so I'll show you all the faces. So there are 13 faces. Yeah. So now you're seeing them. Yeah. So even if you haven't noticed this face on the right side, I point that to your eyes, nose, mouth, and looking up to the left, and then it looks like a face. So we can agree, all of us can look like a face. Yeah. Now try not to see it. And you see, that's the recognition bias. You start to look for certain things, you see them. People see faces in clouds. There are no faces in clouds. It might look like a face, but they're not. So people can, also that will start to prime you. So, people who have certain images in their homes, those images will prime them for certain things. Yeah. So you need to be aware of that as well. And find the 5 below. So quick, it's not random, but lots of digits. Yeah. And usually most people can stand back and kind of look and they just notice those 5s. Yeah. But also there are other numbers. There's like 3 and there's 8. Yeah. So your mind has this amazing ability to notice what you're looking for, but also notice other things, because you have 2 kind of types of attention, kind of narrow focus. I'm looking for 5, but also broad vision. I'm noticing other things. Yeah. And that kind of broad vision is even more important because and it helps with survival. Yeah. And unfortunately, because of the little devices called mobile phones, we lose peripheral vision. And that's important when you do Feng Shui, you need to see more, actually, yeah, not less. So yeah, I'm sure you've seen this little kind of puzzles. So is it a rabbit or duck? Depends how you look at it. And on the right is this, an old lady or young bride. Yep. So I'm sure you've seen this. Yes, kind of change your perspective and you see something else. So let's talk about truth. So truth is just a concept. There's no such thing as the truth, yeah, because it can change. Even the capital of Paris, it might change in the future. We don't know. So it's not the truth, yeah, forever, yeah. So it's kind of personal truths, if you like, or a truth. So, but there are two types of knowing. So the kind of factual proposition knowing, facts, yeah. And in French and in German, they have word for it. In English, we don't actually, which is a shame. So in French, savoir, or German, wissen, it's kind of about that factual knowledge. Yeah. So Paris is the capital of France. It's a fact. H2O is water. Yeah. It's true or false. Is Paris capital of France? Yes. Is Berlin the capital of France? No. Yeah. And there's another type of knowing, kind of normative process knowledge, where you're kind of learning and developing, and basically learning. Yeah? And in French is connaître, and in German is kennen. So it's to know a place like Paris. Yeah. So, I've been to Paris a lot of times. I can't call myself a Parisian. I know it quite well. I like it, but not whole Paris. Yeah. But they'll be a Parisian and they know very well. They live their whole life. They've seen all the areas, and they can call themselves a Parisian, but they're still learning. You see. So it's another way. So you need to distinguish between actual facts, this kind of proposition knowledge, and kind of this encounter knowledge, if you like, where you're learning things all the time. So let's get to some other checklists. So kind of basic things to things, and we'll have a later session about checklists. So kind of develop this as well. And actually, I did a presentation in 2010, and you can watch that presentation on my website. I'll give you the links in the chat shortly. Yeah? So a story is not a fact. It may not be true. A fact is not data. It may not be representative of that fact. Yeah. Data is not evidence. It may not be supportive. Yeah. So again, the quality or the quantity of information or data will inform you. Evidence may not be the proof. It may be. It may not be universal. So that lady with the sensitivity to a hairdryer, a lot of people don't have that problem. Yeah. It doesn't affect them, but it was true for her. And correlation is not causation. So because two things work put together doesn't mean they cause each other. And that's also correlation fallacy. So is it true? Only if yes. Is it a fact? Is it representative? Only if yes. Is it data? Is it supportive? Only if yes, is it evidence? So you kind of ask those questions, once you start to question, they become kind of a default, and you now notice things much quicker than, before. Another checklist, and that's called cognitive bias mitigation strategy. And it's the diagram is slow. So slow, sure, what about and why? S for sure, what about and why? L for look at that data, what is lacking? What's missing? Yeah. Oh, what is the opposite? So you're looking at opposite point of view or opposite theory. Yeah? And the worst case scenario. What else this could be? So you're always open to other explanations. So can you keep an open mind? Yeah. So make yourself aware of the cognitive biases. Practice that of general alternatives. Yeah. Look always at rival theories. Be mindful. So this is important. So a lot of people go into kind of default automatic way of thinking when they're under stress, fatigue, mood, or not well. Extreme happiness as well. So it's not kind of negative things, but also extreme kind of happiness. Fall in love, and suddenly your brain is working a different way. Your love is kind of clouding everything. Yeah? Multitasking, they can affect your decision making. So plus question your intuition hunches. Most of the time they'll be accurate, but also check. Yeah. And this idea of pausing is very useful. Yeah. So pause, especially before making important decisions. And that'll help you to shift the perspective. And also in the whole process, you're going to learn. Yeah. Be aware that, there will be other points of views that can contradict your established norms or beliefs. And it's useful to be exposed to them. Yeah. It doesn't mean you have to take on them, but you can have to kind of exercise them as thoughts. Yeah? So in summary, everything comes from a particular point of view. Yeah. So, and your judgments, your decision, your values will be affected, including Feng Shui. Seek diverse information. Surround yourself with challenging points of view or challenging, things, but people are still free to make decisions, even if they're not in the best interest, So, if somebody believes that number 4 is bad, and they're not even aware of the association because they read it in the book, and that's their belief, it will going to affect them. So maybe they shouldn't buy it. Yeah, yeah. Or east-facing houses, the directionology. There's not much evidence about directions. I probably have 2 papers on directions, and one is about the axis of east and west and how people sleep when they're facing those directions. And the other one is kind of more animal-based studies where north-south, and then a lot of animals, when they sleep, they align themselves to the north, so the head is pointed to the north. And in many cultures, in Estonia and Poland, a lot of people try to sleep with the head north because they kind of believe them. So there is some evidence, but also there's a belief system behind it. Yeah. So, but if it works, as long as it works and it doesn't give you a false problem, it doesn't give you fear or stress, it doesn't matter really. Yeah. So use tools, access the information. I list most of my resources and references so people can check and make the decision. Yeah. Most of the time, my advice kind of evidence-based. Yeah. And if it's not, like astrology, I'll tell them, I preempt them. So like, look, there's no, I know astrologers who have PhD in astrology. There's a lot of research into astrology, but there's no evidence how it works. And because of the interpretation, yeah, they agree on a lot of things. And I'm not saying it's bad. I use astrology and people ask me, I'm happy to kind of, but most of the time, it'll be a particular type of astrology, which is very positive. I'll never predict anything bad because you can't really, you can't predict anything as such. So use different tools and kind of list your references, and then be open to try new ideas, because even if they're nonsensical, I learn a lot through superstition, through kind of false problems. Yeah. And because you learn something new, you start to unpack why people would believe that. Why, for example, toilet in the northeast part of the house is a bad idea in Vastu Shastra. Well, because in the old days, the plumbing and the whole mechanics of toilets was very advanced. Yeah. And actually, northeast part of the house is the coldest part of the house. Yeah. So there'll be more mold. Yeah. But nowadays, that's not really a big problem. Yeah. But people made this kind of into superstition because gods or whatever is affecting you from that direction, and they kind of so useful thing is like if people tell you something like, why do you believe that? Where is the evidence? Can you explain that? But if you dig deep enough, usually it's a practical explanation that why ancient people or in different cultures had certain beliefs. Yeah. And And finally, well, not finally, but Niels Bohr said, when they're asking about Feng Shui, he used the horseshoe about his door, and that's Feng Shui for prosperity. And they asked him, why are you using this? You're a man of science and you believe in this superstition. And he said, I understand that it works, whether you believe in it or not. He went beyond his own belief system. Yeah, so it's not harmful. It's nice. People like it. It's kind of fun, and it's not a big deal really. Yeah, so he used that. Yeah, and obviously he studied different types of biases. I'll give you some books. But there are lots of bias trainings or tests. Most of them are kind of for organization and companies. Yeah, but ultimately seek diverse information. Look at it from different points of view, and that will give you a bigger picture. Open your peripheral vision as well. So this is a long list. So I've speed read over 100 books for you, so you don't have to read them. So this is the list. I'll put that link in the chat so you can go to that page and you see all the books. But I'll pull out a few books for you. So this book I mentioned earlier, Cognitive Bias Could Get You Killed. So it's kind of a detective story, kind of factual books, and you learn about some basic bias. It's kind of a fun thing. Yeah? And at the moment, I think it's free on Kindle if you've got the subscription. And then Henry Priest got 2 books, Basis and Heuristics, so like 50 biases, and then for business, 101 biases. Yeah, and Think Again, Adam Grant, is kind of how people think. And then Master Mindset, Marina Konnikova, it's about how to kind of switch on your Sherlock Holmes kind of deductive thinking. Yeah? And a lot of books about how to think like Sherlock Holmes. I really recommend start to notice things in a different way, in a more kind of factual way. So kind of start with this. And so I'll finish with this. Become wise and knowledgeable. So obviously, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. That's an old quote, yeah. But we've got a better quote from Lao Tzu. If you want to become knowledgeable, learn one new thing every day. So you get more information, yeah. You're more knowledge. If you want to become wise, unlearn one thing every day. So I hope you learn some new things, but also you're going to start unlearning some things. Yeah? But how do you go beyond that, really? Because, in personal development, you go forever. Personal development is almost infinite. Yeah? There's so much you can do. So we've got some information and advice from, again, Lao Tzu and this Indian mystic Nisargadatta Maharaj. And they suggest that, so I'll read the quote from the Maharaj. So a quiet mind, undistorted by desires and fears, and that's the basis of most biases. So a quiet mind, undistorted by desires and fears, free from ideas and opinions, clear on all levels, is needed to reflect the reality. Be clear and quiet, alert and detached, and all else will happen by itself. And the same from Lao Tzu, you can be still, look at it, detach yourself so you can see how things are, and then things will start. So you're moving to a level beyond this. You can't solve it on the, ultimately you can kind of manage it on the level of personality, but you have to go beyond kind of transpersonal level. So that's a kind of useful way of looking how to go beyond that. So it's kind of a shortcut. And I finished with this quick story. So Asclepius and 2 travelers. Asclepius was once sitting by a small stream in the countryside outside Athens, having his lunch. Just at that moment, a traveler came by. Excuse me, said the man, I'm going to Athens and I've never been there before. Have you any idea what it's like? Where have you come from? Asked Asclepius. Piraeus. I think Christian will correct my pronunciation. So Piraeus, said the man. Well, what's that like? Asked Asclepius. Oh, it's a dreadful place, said the man, full of traffic and noise and dirt and unfriendly people. It's a terrible place. Don't go there. Well, I expect you'll find Athens just the same, said Asclepius. Oh dear, said the man, and he walked slowly on his way. While enjoying his lunch, when Asclepius was interrupted by another traveler. Excuse me, said the second man, I'm going to Athens and I've never been there before. Have you any idea what it's like? Where have you come from? Asked Asclepius. Piraeus, said the second man. Well, what's that like? Asked Asclepius. Oh, it's a wonderful place, said the man, full of life and gaiety and color and friendly people. It's a fantastic place. Well, I expect you'll find Athens just the same, said Asclepius. Oh, good, said the man, and he walked briskly on his way. Asclepius smiled and took another bite of his bread and feta cheese sandwich. It was delicious. So, my name is Jan. I'm still biased, less because I've worked on this presentation. Yeah. So I'll put some links to the chat. So I've got actually, I did a blog some time ago about this thing. So I'll put some links in the chat. So, I don't know if you've got any questions or we've got time for questions.
Jan, do you want to unshare your screen? Everybody's made a note of that.
Yeah.
And also you can put your contact details in the chat as well.
So
That was fantastic, Jan. Very full, very good insights in there. We may well have questions, but we are coming up to a break.
okay.
So let's see if somebody has a question on the chat. At least we can log them on there and then we decide how we handle them. But we've got other gaps today where we could do that. You've got, you shared about the blog post. What about, do you think you might make your PowerPoint available to people?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, obviously this is recorded, so
yes, this is recorded, but there's some very good data there. I mean,
right.
I just absolutely endorse the power of a question. There are books just written about questions, asking good questions. That's really great. Okay.
I've just posted in the chat all the links that.
Okay. Well, nobody's flagged up a question yet. So shall we go for our scheduled break? It's 11 and we've got on the schedule for people to have, let's give it a 9-minute break to go and refresh, top up the tea and water and come back. And then we're going to spend some time with Rachel. That works for everybody. Can you unshare your screen, Jan?
Actually, I've done that. It's still.
No, we're still looking at your screen.
Oh.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
That's
oh,
great.
yeah. That's that. Okay.
Fantastic. That is great. And let's put the gallery view on. Yay. We can give an applause for you, can't we, folks?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Show our appreciation for that. That's lovely. Brilliant. Okay.
Press stop record.
Excuse me?
Remember to press stop record in a minute.
Thank you. Bless you. Thank you, Mary. I'm going to send you, it's 11:03. Can we come back in 9 minutes? Go and get your tea and things, and I'm now going to do the pause. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to have our next presentation. Do we need to mute? Can you mute yourself, please? I don't want to mute everybody and mute Rachel. So if you mute yourself, please. So what we're talking about now, Rachel is going to talk about growing your Feng Shui consultancy through effective digital marketing. And I would imagine there's a varying level of expertise here. There are people who've, maybe you've got people working for them or they've mastered things. There are people who are quite new or virgins to this. You can find out, Rachel, but I would imagine we've got a range of knowledge. And Rachel, let me just tell you a little bit about Rachel's background. Unusual, really, because she's 20 years experience in this field of marketing, having studied photography, fine art, and studied marketing, social media, brand development. But she's also trained in Feng Shui and hypnotherapy, and this is an NLP. And it's interesting in the times we are now to take in kind of these two worlds. I think this really makes, when you take on these skills, it makes you a better business person. So it's fantastic that she's showing here today with this deep knowledge of Feng Shui and her expertise in marketing. So I'm going to hand over to you in your presentation, Rachel. Thank you, and we'll give you a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. Could you share my screen, please? Because I've seemed to have lost Zoom. Oh, is that possible for you to do that? Oh, I thought I had this SAS before.
You can try sharing again. So just sort of click on share screen again, try to do it again.
Oh, here we go. Got it. Yeah, thank you very much. Right. Can you see it?
I've been talking to you, Rachel, but I was
Yes, we can see it. We can see it.
We can see it. Off you go, lovely.
The typos, that's a great start. Anyway, yes, so hello everybody, I'm Rachel Manning. I run a digital marketing business, as Gina said, and I've been running it for 20 years. I'm also trained in Feng Shui and various other therapies, but because my business grew so rapidly during the 2008 recession, I had to sort of take a break, but I'm just beginning to get back into doing it now because I'm very passionate about it. Anyway, so let's start the presentation. So yeah, there's a lot of information here to cover. I have got a clock. I'm going to keep an eye on time. Yeah, I'm going to aim to have some question time at the end. So let's get started. Okay, so just like when you're doing a Feng Shui consultation for a client, with marketing, it's also very important to regularly audit your current status quo. For example, looking at your website, your LinkedIn profile, your social media presence, how many visitors are finding you each month from the different places you can be found online using Google Analytics. And it's important to look at it from the eyes of the client, and particularly your ideal client. So if you're wanting to attract more corporate clients, then, you know, it needs to sort of reflect that. Or if it's more residential work, then the same applies. Also look at your text, and obviously that needs updating on a regular basis, and it needs to be written to engage the client. And I'm sure most of you know this, but it's much better if it's written, you know, if you have this problem, you know, this is how I can help, rather than it being all about you. So what are the critical elements of a good marketing campaign? Well, there's lots of ways you can market yourself, but the real sort of starting point is having a good website. Ideally, you can build it using Feng Shui principles. So, for example, colours that support, you know, your wealth elements, if you're into that kind of thing. But also a website that's inspiring, uplifting, and also helps people. So provides information. Even if they never become a client, you know, that it's still a good thing to provide useful information that can help people, because you're giving something away for free. And the more you do that, the more it tends to come back to you. It's also really important to have a strong personal brand. I'll come on to this in more detail, but building strong social proof is critical. And connecting with others, so working together to raise the awareness of Feng Shui and the Feng Shui Society as a whole, I think is also particularly important. So your website, I would always say this is the first point to address. And there are some simple things like, is it SSL secure, which means it has the little padlock at the top of the address bar. If it doesn't, sometimes you get a warning coming up, which makes people think it's not a safe website to visit, but also it looks like it hasn't been updated for a long time. So it's important to do. It's not very expensive, even if you aren't collecting lots of secure information. It's also important to keep it up to date, especially since because of lockdown, a lot of people have changed the way they practice. And also you may, you know, have changed your focus, or you may have added new strings to your bow, or you may have narrowed what you want to offer people. It should also be vibrant and interesting. As I mentioned before, the text, is it written in the correct tense? Is it written to, you know, really talk to the person and answer their problems? Do you have a blog? Now, I absolutely love blogs. The reason being is basically, for one thing, if you provide really good information, and I'll come on to this in a bit more detail, it helps with getting your website ranked better in Google. It keeps people on your site for longer because, you know, there's lots more information on there. But also it's kind of like, if you're prepared, if you've got all this knowledge and you can give away really good content for free, people think of you as a person that, you know, if they can give me this for free, God, they must have so much more. And that will help to engage them and hopefully eventually get them to be one of your clients. Do you have a newsletter sign-up facility? Now, I find that clients that have newsletters tend to get a real spike in traffic when they send one out, and it can be one of the best ways they get sales or inquiries. So you can set up something like MailChimp for free. If you have a lot of subscribers, then you start having to pay for it. But it will offer you the feature. It will allow you to send out timely emails which have helpful tips, positive energy, and you can also advertise any offers or changes in the way you work. But the main thing about an email newsletter is to really, again, provide helpful information. It really shouldn't be too much about, it shouldn't be too sales based. And then, do your images and logo have good feng shui? Do they incorporate the right colors for the wealth of your business, the creativity? Is the symbolism good? I mean, this is probably stuff that you all know already, but it is important just to have a look at that. And then we've got your personal brand. So, excuse me, because you are generally, you're trying to build yourself as a person. It's like it's different to a big company. So people by people, and the marketplace in every industry is getting more and more competitive. So you need to stand out, and this really needs to be addressed in your marketing activity. So you have to really differentiate yourself, because you're all different. You all have different specialities. You all come at feng shui from a different angle, practice different systems, I expect, have different specialisms. So what are your USPs? And if I was looking for a consultant, why would I choose you? Especially if I came to the Feng Shui Society website as my starting point, why should I choose you? It's not necessarily just because you're the closest person to me. It's because there's something about your energy that I tune into that is going to be the right person for me. I think one of the most important things about building your brand is sharing parts of yourself in what you put out there in the information. And I know that can be quite scary. I find it quite difficult, but I found recently I've been posting more on LinkedIn. And when I put something up that is slightly personal, you're not giving everything away, and I link it into something business related that's useful to businesses, then it tends to get really good engagement. So yeah, dare to share, I think, is how I put that. And I also believe it's not really about who you trained with or your list of qualifications or your prestigious clientele if you advertise them. It's about your energy and how you can help people. So I would say aim from the heart and really, show people who you are in your personal brand. And that's the way I think you'll attract the right type of clients for you. So, social proof. Social proof means social proof is about making yourself appear popular. And it's also about providing a consistent image online so that everything is integrated and coherent. On social media, people judge any type of person by reviewing their websites, their social profiles, and their credentials. So on social media, the things that people look at are, do you post regularly? Are the posts interesting? And how many people follow you? Do you back up what you say with case studies, reviews, and testimonials? And who are you connected to? So the reason, although most people won't mind your list of connections, if you're connected to good people that are relevant to your business and to you, then, and they interact with your posts, then that will help to build your brand, your personal brand, and also your social proof. So that's worth looking into. So here are some ways you can build your social proof. First of all, ensure all your profiles and About Me page are complete and up to date with all the relevant info. Use original high-resolution images and preferably shot by you where possible. The reason I say this is because if you shoot a picture yourself, whether it's a picture of some flowers or whatever it is, it's got your energy in it. So again, you're kind of putting your energy into your website and your social media. Obviously, you can't always do that, but it does help. Use hashtags on Twitter and Instagram to build followers. And I'll come on to the different channels later. Ask people to like your Facebook page or do a paid likes campaign to build followers, which again, I'll come on to. The other thing you can do is on your email footer, you can have links to all of your social profiles. It just helps, you know, the more integrated everything is, the more people can find all of your information. And respond to comments quickly. So if you put a post up there and you get a really nice comment from somebody, it's really good to like it and to comment back if it's relevant. And also respond to direct messages quickly. The reason being is this shows your page or your profile is active and well maintained. So the main ways to get people to your website, and bearing in mind this is a lot of work and potentially a lot of money, is the first thing is search engine optimization, abbreviated to SEO. And that means getting to the top of the search results in Google for relevant search terms. It used to be very easy. It is now very difficult. Well, not difficult, but it takes a lot of time. I would usually tell a client, you should expect it to take at least 4 to 6 months to start getting results. It involves creating a lot of content and therefore costs, you know, a reasonable amount of money. You've got paid advertising on Google and LinkedIn, to be fair, but Google is pretty good because if somebody is searching for something, you come up right at the top. However, it is very expensive and it needs careful management because otherwise you can throw a lot of money down the drain. And if you've noticed, a lot of the page is now taken up with paid ads on Google. So the organic search engine optimization is pushed a lot further down now. So unless you're at number 1 or 2 or 3 for the organic, really, you know, the paid ads are probably more effective. But search engine optimization in the long term is much more cost effective because although rankings will drop off over time, if you don't maintain it, it's very slow that they drop off. And whereas if you stop paid advertising on Google, it literally will stop the second you stop paying. And as I mentioned before, email newsletters are brilliant. They don't take that much work. MailChimp can be set up fairly easily. You need a nice template, and then you just need the content, and you can link it through to blogs. Anything sort of, you can write it from a seasonal basis and promote anything, you know, that you want to talk about. So my recommendations are, first of all, after you've polished your website, reviewed it through fresh eyes, maybe even get a few friends to have a look at it or other consultants, and your social profiles, make a smart plan. Because you can't do it all unless you've got loads and loads of money or loads and loads of time. So you need to decide what you're going to do and do it well, because it's much better to do a few things well than to just try and, you know, do everything and you know, not do it so well. So I personally recommend LinkedIn, organic LinkedIn and Instagram. I'll come on to that, both of those channels in a bit. I don't personally like Facebook because, well, for personal reasons, I find it is a bit sensitive these days, as I think was referenced before in the previous talk. And Instagram is very visual, and I like visual, and I'll come on to that in more detail. In order to do a good social media campaign to save time, I would recommend writing a general content plan for 3 to 6 months. And then for each month, write all of the posts in one go, so that you've got, basically, if you try and write a post sort of, every day, or it's not that I'm saying post every day, but if you try and write, say, I don't know, you're going to do one every Monday, and you have to sit there and think about it, it's going to take you a lot more time than if you think about it and spend 4 hours writing the whole month and then scheduling it. That's a much quicker way to do it. And if you don't have the time or the motivation to do this yourself, or if you just don't like writing about yourself, you find it really difficult, which a lot of people do, then you could employ a freelancer or an agency to maintain a generic presence. However, because you need to put your energy into it, especially in Feng Shui writing, then you need to direct them very clearly as to what kind of post you want. And you also, you've got to you've got to work with them. You can't expect them to do it all themselves, because otherwise it won't be very good. And it needs to tune in with your personal energy and what's going on. And then if you did go down that route, you could then add some ad hoc posts. For example, if you did a great consultation, you could write something about that and just put it up there. Or if there was something in the news that was relevant, you could, just supplement your generic plan with, some sort of extra bits and pieces. So LinkedIn. So this is probably, along with Instagram, my favorite channel now. The reason being, I find it gets a good response. It is directed at people in business, and you can build your connections carefully, and you can write long posts. So it's a good way to connect with people. But LinkedIn, you need to use it very sporadically. So it's really used when you've got something important to say. It's not I don't know, some people use it for all sorts of different things. But I would personally recommend using it when you've been featured in a magazine, or you've got a comment that's directly relevant, you've got a post that's directly related to something like, for example, International Women's Day. I did one for that. So less is more. Publish links to your blog, publish links if you write opinion piece type articles, or if you make videos, anything like that. Again, always trying to direct them back to your website, because that's really where we're trying to get people to go. Build relevant connections. Ideally, you want to get 500 plus. So you might have to just kind of start with, accept lots and lots of people, but really you want relevant connections so that you're getting your message out to people that are interested, and then they will hopefully engage with posts. And making an effort to interact with other people's content as well, because the more you interact with people, the more they'll interact back with you. And a real top tip, which you probably already know, but is get the app on your phone, so that if you're out and about and you meet somebody, instead of, you may still do the business card thing, but it's much easier just to connect with them on LinkedIn. This is a tricky one in this industry, but asking clients for recommendations is really, really powerful, because if people recommend you on LinkedIn, it shows their name. So it's not like having a testimonial on your website, which a good copywriter can basically write for you quite happily. And the way I do it is I ask the client if they would give me a recommendation. I then say to them, if you're tight for time, I'm happy to write it for you, i.e. I'll get the key points in that I want them to cover. And then I'll send it to them and say, and if you want to obviously change any of it or add anything else. And most clients say yes. And I like to get, excuse me, I like to have, I've got quite a few recommendations. And if I do a very interesting project, I try and get a recommendation for that, because it shows the sort of breadth of work that I do. And again, talk from the heart, because there's a lot of noise on every social media channel. Always use a picture. That applies to any social media. And yeah, don't overpost. And because I think it's just, I find it really annoying. In fact, I almost, I'm tempted to switch a lot of people off, but I haven't got around to doing it. However, I did find out recently that despite there's this woman, a photographer that's local to me, and she posts nearly every day, and she actually gets an enormous amount of work out of it. So that's your personal choice, but my personal recommendation is to, post good stuff when you've got something really important to say, and just keep it simple. So YouTube, if you're brave, feel comfortable in creating videos about Feng Shui, this is a brilliant way to promote your business, because people that can see and hear you face to face helps them to connect with your energy. But also videos can be great because you can give them tips to help them improve their Feng Shui. Again, you're giving things away for free, and the more you give away, the more they understand you, and they understand how clever you are, and so they will eventually hopefully turn into a client. So yeah, videos on how people can improve their life is a great way to get onto people's radars. Instagram. I love Instagram. I am quite a creative person, and it's a very creative platform because it's predominantly pictures. And it's also a great way to find and display images to show clients examples of what they need in a certain corner of their home, but mountain, whatever. Because I have noticed, and this is not just with clients, but personally, having had a lot of Feng Shui consultations in the past, getting precise imagery and symbolism is actually really difficult. And if you are someone, you say someone gets a picture in for your relationship corner, which is got two happy people, but or maybe I don't know, they've got something like with two birds on it, but one's much higher than the other, then you're kind of not the symbolism isn't quite correct. So you could create a whole load of pictures and posts around, this is a great picture for your relationship corner, or this is a great picture for your helpful people, or whatever, and this is a really bad one, and then explain why. And then what you can then do when you go to a consultation is, when you're saying to somebody you need this certain type of picture, fountain, whatever it is, you can you've got all the pictures on your wall, your Instagram wall, that you can quickly find. So you can say, look, here's an example. So the more you've got on there, the more resources you've got. I mean, you may have another way of doing it in your personal consultations, but that's just an idea. You may or may not have heard of Linktree. It's something you can add to your bio in Instagram, because you can't actually add clickable links. So for example, if you're promoting your blog, a blog that you've just written, you can put the link in there, but people can't click on it. And some people just put the link in the bio and then they change it up, every time they post something new. But if you have Linktree, you can put all the links that you've included in there, and you can also link to other channels and your website. So I would personally recommend having your adding that to your Instagram account. And you build followers on Instagram with relevant hashtags. So you can have up to 30. And the way I would do it is I would create a document which has lots and lots of different hashtags that you can copy and paste. Again, it saves time. And you don't want to go for really broad ones like Feng Shui, because the reason you have the hashtags to build followers is because people do searches. So if you have Feng Shui, when they do a search, there'll be so many posts that by the time they've done the search, yours will be, so far down they won't find it. But if you have more longer ones, which are more precise, so for example, Feng Shui for relationships, or Feng Shui for business, or something, and you can search on Instagram. If you go onto your computer and go into the search bar, you can actually see how many people how many posts there are. So you want to find ones that haven't got huge numbers of posts already. So they're quite specific. And what that means is that you are then likely to get 1 or 2 followers from people doing searches because you will come up because there's not that many people using them. And you can also build your own personal brand hashtag, which is quite good as well. So Facebook, so yeah, your business Facebook page, if you had 100 followers to it, as an example, about 3% of them would actually see your organic post in their newsfeed. And the reason this is because Facebook wants you to pay for advertising because it wants to make more money. So unless you boost the post, it's unlikely to get much engagement unless you've got a very, very large following. So boosting posts is, it's a reasonably cheap way to do things. It does, it does get more people seeing it. But also posting it to your personal page is a very good idea because, if you've got lots of relevant friends, then they're much more likely to see it there than they are on the business page. So posting it on both places is recommended. A likes campaign, so this is a paid advertising campaign on Facebook, is really beneficial if you haven't got many followers, and this is for your business page. And the reason you do this is because it builds, first of all, it builds relevant followers, but it also builds your social proof. And that is absolutely critical if you do paid advertising on Facebook, because in a paid ad on Facebook, it will show you how many people follow the page. So if you've got, you don't need a huge number of followers on Facebook, but you probably need to be aiming for at least 600-700. The more you've got, the more established you look, the more credible you are. And yeah, it's all about social proof. Facebook advertising does work for some clients very well. It's generally cheaper than Google Ads, but it is important to engage with a professional to do this because it does require careful management. And it also needs an honest person to tell you if it's not working, because otherwise they could just let it run and run and run, and you've got to track the results from it very carefully to make sure you're not just wasting your money. Excuse me. So, promoting Feng Shui as a whole. I'm, not as in the industry as most of you are, but I feel that I used to see, years and years and years ago, Feng Shui was in the media all the time, and I don't see it as much nowadays. So this is probably not, entirely true, but it's clever people who use it. And I know a lot of famous people use it, but they won't necessarily shout about it. So I was wondering if the society could work together to raise the awareness of how life-changing it can be, and especially how useful it is at the current time. Things like PR coverage and influencers would give the entire industry an uplift. And then, this is an obvious one, but don't forget to use your Feng Shui. So powerful marketing combined with Feng Shui knowledge sets you apart from other business owners. Choose auspicious days for posting and tune your marketing to the energy of the month. Work your home and office. Now, I don't need to tell you about this, but if you're doing some sort of marketing campaign, you could perhaps put it in the south. Or you could put business cards of people you want to connect with in the northwest. All this stuff, but doing it at the right time. So if you're about to do a campaign, putting something in the right place and working the two things together will just give it that extra boost. So the key takeaways. Your website and personal brand are the absolute key places to start, and they do need reviewing regularly. Give away content that is really useful for free, whether that's blogs, pictures on Instagram, useful posts, or videos. The more you give away, the more knowledgeable you become, and the more you will hook in new clients. Get out and about, help each other, do talks, work together as a society, if that is something that resonates with you. And integrate your marketing campaigns with simple Feng Shui placements. Yes.
Rachel, it's great.
Good.
Wonderful. So if you click the end of your slideshow, and I will spotlight you, and you can put your web contact details in the chat, so people have got that to hand, although it may well be on the details of the day. And we do have a few questions. An example of a link tree, whether you can show that. You've unshared your screen now. I don't know whether you can, or point people to where a link where they could see what a link tree is.
It will take me a little bit of time to get that together. So instead of doing that, can I send you a email on Monday with all of that, with that in it? I should have put it into the presentation, but yeah.
Wonderful. That's really great. Somebody asked that you, it was Gina Lazenby. Somebody asked about USP, and the answer is their unique selling proposition, unique selling point. And there was another good question about LinkedIn. What would you recommend? Sharon's asking, would you recommend creating a separate LinkedIn page or adding to your existing career profile?
That's a really good question. Okay, so basically, again, with business pages on LinkedIn, very few people, you'll find it very hard to get people to follow them. So what I would recommend is you post to your business page and then you share it to your personal page, which then goes out to all your network. Does that make sense? So you post it, you actually add the physical post to your business page if you have one. Yeah, and then you share it to your personal page, and hopefully one or two of the people that see the post in your personal network will then start to follow your business page, and that will grow it over time.
So you're saying if somebody has a Feng Shui business, they have a page for that, like you might have a Facebook, they have a page, and when they're posting about that, they're putting it on their Feng Shui business page and cross-referencing it and sharing it on their personal page.
Yes, you could do that, or you could just have a person. It depends who you are. If you are completely defined as a Feng Shui consultant, then you may just really need a personal page and link to that. The other thing I didn't mention is it's important to have little icons on your website which link to your social media profiles. However, a lot of people put them at the top of their page, and I personally would recommend putting them in the footer. The reason being is because when you've got someone on your website, you really don't want to be sending them off somewhere else, because the minute they get onto Facebook, they get distracted by, oh, they've had a baby or whatever it is, and then you've lost them. So yeah, that's I would.
It's a very good point.
Yeah.
And just to come back to that LinkedIn, you can have all about yourself on LinkedIn because this is the professional forum. You don't have to have a business page, but you can choose to. You don't have to do it. Is that right?
Yeah. So what I do for iMarketing, I mean, again, I don't practice what I preach half the time with my marketing. The reason being is because I'm so busy, and all my work comes from recommendations pretty much. So I've pretty much never done any marketing in my life. It's just it just comes. So yeah, I'm actually too busy at the moment, and desperately trying to declutter that business so that I can get more into doing my Feng Shui again. So
signs of the times. Somebody's asked about Pinterest, because that's another visual means. Like you said about Instagram being so very visual. Can you comment on Pinterest, because it's a way of putting boards together, and you know, what role would Pinterest play? Bear in mind, you highlighted that you don't want to be adept at everything. You want to choose a forum, and you're highlighting LinkedIn and Instagram. So where in this
I didn't have Pinterest, actually. I'd completely not even thought about that when I was writing this, but basically I have a Pinterest account. I love Pinterest for my artwork. You know, making lots of things that I like. And that would be another fantastic tool to take with you on consultations. So yeah, by all means, it's a brilliant option. If yeah, and I would say it's probably right up there if you want to do, say, the examples of this is a good picture, this is a bad picture, this symbolism is bad because the two people are looking the wrong, you know, away from each other, or you know, this is a picture, like say if you've got a big load of photos and the way they're positioned is really bad, you know, you could show an example of a bad positioning compared to a good positioning. Yeah, you could do all sorts of things. It depends how much time you've got, what appeals to you. Everybody has different some people don't like LinkedIn at all. I absolutely hate Twitter with a passion.
Yeah, Twitter seems to be a forum for people to complain, doesn't it? And there's a certain characteristics.
Yeah, it's yeah, I don't like
venting.
Yeah,
but I think the nature of Facebook has changed, and a lot of people are leading, and LinkedIn is really ascending. And even if, you know, I don't think of LinkedIn simply as for a business consultation. I think professional people are on it all the time, and they have their own needs. I remember years ago speaking to a work business group, maybe a group of shops, and I really tailored my presentation all about the shops. And the first question was about their bedrooms and sleeping. They're all personal. So
it's all interlinked, isn't it? I mean, if you do a business consultation for somebody, even though you know you'd probably call you to do their office, you'd probably want to do their home as well. Yeah, and also, like, business people have got money, and you know, you need clients that have got money, basically. So yeah, it's just people. Yeah, so
one comment about Twitter. I use Twitter to get my blogs very quickly listed or indexed, because you know, if you post a blog, it might take 2 or 3 days for it to be listed. So for example, if there's some topical thing and I want my blog to be listed today, I'll put it on Twitter, it listed, and I get a call from BBC and they want to interview me because that's my top thing. So there is usefulness in Twitter in terms of ranking and listing and index. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic.
I think that's a good distinction, because what you're doing is it's a trending subject. I know that for some reason Twitter has made itself appear on my headline page. I didn't put it there, and I get all the morning headlines of things, and it gives me a quick scan of things. So yes, I think you're right, Jan, for trending. I think it's wrong of me to say it's just there for people criticizing, but it is a different mindset to the others, isn't it? Yeah. And you're right, there's an immediacy. I know that Conscious Cafe always puts their events out on there. So yes, I suppose what you're saying, Rachel, is have an understanding of all of them, and choose the ones that you're most comfortable with, that you like and find easy, and skill up and work on those, and then add the others, rather than try to be good at everything.
Yeah, I mean, the question about Twitter and the urgency, see, I don't have a sense of urgency generally, and you know, it goes up, and it's I promote it via other, you know, so if I put a blog up, really, then I will link to it from my other channels. And to be honest, every client that we work with that is sort of in the business to business sector tends to have LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook. Sometimes not Facebook, but sometimes Instagram. I haven't got Instagram for our marketing because there's not much visually, you know, there's not a huge amount that I can really post on there easily and quickly. I have got one which is very new for my healing business, and I have a personal one as well. But yeah, yeah, there's lots of ways to do marketing. It really is, you know, I could talk about it all day. But
also, there's TikTok, very popular. If you want to trend, and especially if something current, you post it on TikTok and you get 1 million followers.
Yeah.
So, but again, it's more like Facebook, so I wouldn't expect to get work from TikTok.
So Jan, are you doing your silly dances on TikTok?
No, I'm not on TikTok. I don't have time to.
I find
That's a
those
good idea.
crazy.
Feng Shui silly dance.
I do. That's
Around the
why,
bagu. Are you dancing around the bagu?
yeah, I do associate it with silly dances and things.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So,
Yeah, so choose your priorities and do them well. If you do get someone to help you, make sure that first of all they have some understanding of the topic and direct them very, very clearly. I.e., this month I want a post about this. You almost have to probably draft it roughly for them and get them to write it and then proof it, make sure it's accurate.
Yeah.
And if you want it to be really good, then you know you've got the knowledge. They haven't. So
yeah. Great. And you did raise a point about Feng Shui in the media. I mean, you know, I don't know when you're referring to, but certainly in the early days, I mean, I came to the Feng Shui conversation. I had my own PR business and that's what I did.
really,
And I put a huge amount of effort into putting out Western stories about Feng Shui and place them in literally all the media. That would be the mid-90s, and
that's exactly when I'm talking about. It was just everywhere. It was so fashionable. It was like everybody was talking about Feng Shui.
it was.
And I don't tune into the media too much because I'm quite sensitive. So I don't like half the stuff that's out there at the moment. So I kind of so I may not have the full picture. But yeah, I did actually get interviewed by a local paper last year. About Feng Shui, they just randomly called me up, and it did lead to a client. It's not kind of, it's not. I don't feel that enough. As well, the other thing, if I've just quickly got time to share this, so because I have two worlds, I'm two different people. So a lot of my business clients, as they get to know me over time, I kind of share with them a little bit about my kind of very alternative interests, but most of them don't take it seriously. And it's like, mad, it's like, it's so powerful.
Well, I think you touched on an interesting point there about the two worlds, and I think that's a conversation for another time that we can really delve into, because it is interesting. I mean, just share, over the years, I've been to something in San Francisco called Wisdom 2.0. I started going there in the early 2013, 14, and it was Buddhist meditation and spirituality and tech. San Francisco, and the merging of those worlds and the wisdom behind what we're creating. And in the early days of going there, people would say, I practice meditation yoga, but I don't tell anybody at work. Yeah. And then I'm coming here in my own time. And then gradually, as I was going there, people would say, now I tell people all of who I am. And I share that I am the meditator and the yoga practitioner in my business. And I remember somebody going there who ran the prison service in Arkansas. First year he went there, it was personal. And then the second and third years, he was taking meditation into all the prisons in the state. So that's the evolution of the journey. And we often look to the West Coast of America to see futuristic things, So it's interesting, but just on the media side, in that time, a lot of effort went into it. But there was something about the moment and the readiness. And I think we can't just come out now and say, "Hey, Feng Shui." I think we have to come out now and say, it's needed, and this is what the modern Feng Shui can do for people, and talk about its need. And I think that, again, we can come together as a group and discuss how we do that. Bring out a new conversation, because I think the moment's here for people to hear how they can, heal themselves in their own homes. Yeah, it's a big question.
One way might be to do it is to have make a video like this today, which everybody contributes to. Perhaps it's just coming right off the top of my head, but it basically talks about how Feng Shui can help in the modern world, and how important it is. And how it can be, combined with, your other, completely different lifestyle.
Can I add something there, Gina? Rachel, what I'm finding with clients, coming for a consult or whatever, they're often saying, oh yeah, we know Feng Shui. It's like it's done, dusted, 90s. Everyone is an expert on Feng Shui, but I've got a problem. And so my approach is, well, what is your problem? Let me find a solution. And as Jan said, it's a very psychological thing. So we've gone from Feng Shui as it was in the 90s into psychology. So I call it psychotherapy of space. And what's happening often is that people, as Jan said in his talk, they are externalizing the problem and blaming it on their house or their partner or the land or the entities or the ghosts. And what I'm finding all the time is to point out that those ghosts are your inner ghosts. Let's face it, don't call me to come and hang your wind chime or put a three-legged toad in your door. Let's look at what your issues are and deal with those. But I'm not going to deal with it. I'm going to show you how you can deal with it. So I think if there's a new approach, my sense is that's the consults I'm getting and the approaches. And it works if you get people to look at that. And of course, it sends them into past lives, to really deal with those past lives, ancestral patterns, which is why we've come with the baggage this time, and doing quantum timeline regressions are really powerful. And it gives the power back to the person to look at their own stuff, not someone else doing it. So I think that's, yeah.
Well, you're going to be talking more about that later, aren't you? So that's
fantastic, really.
when you're talking this afternoon, Christian. That's you're absolutely right. That's really great.
Yeah, so, once I start, I can't stop.
I was finish with is that potentially I haven't got a huge number of PR connections apart from locally, but I can probably find some, and if we'll be more than happy to help. I'm sure you've probably got, Gina.
Oh, that's great. We need people to come together and cluster around different issues. So that is great. I can see my microphone, which I've been speaking into, isn't plugged in anyway. So Rachel, I'm going to give you a big thank you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me today. I'm really grateful. It's been lovely to be here. I have to leave this afternoon, but I will see you all again.
Well, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. And we're going to segue straight into our next section. Let me just change all the spotlights on here. Okay. Rachel, thank you. That was really brilliant.
Everybody, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, that's fantastic. The spotlight. And do a time check. Here we are at 12:03, and we have our next session on checklists. And what we're going to do is talk about, some of you may have checklists already for doing a consultation in your head, written down. You may have used them before and stopped using them. You may not have had one. So I think it's going to be an interesting conversation, a way of sharing expertise for us to look at this. And I'm going to suggest that we go into breakout groups, have a conversation, and then come back and pool our knowledge and see whether at the end of it we pull together a checklist, or we got some data there that we can share. I remember, just harking back to what we've just discussed, when I was doing Feng Shui consultation with William Spear, and I would book those for him and accompany them. This is in the early 90s. And I would accompany him. And because he was flying over from America, and he would do a 1-hour consultation, and we would do 6 in a day, which I thought was normal at the time. It's a bit of a shock later on when I go out and do consultations and realize necessarily that, it takes longer than an hour. But if you're masterful at something, you can get straight in there. But we would have a long day, and I would drive him around London. And we build up this client list over time, because he wasn't in London all the time, coming over from the States. But anyway, we'd arrive in places, and I would watch how he'd ask questions around the Bagua. He'd ask 9 questions about their life and use the Bagua as the stimulus for those 9 questions. That was a great thing to copy. And then he would get them to walk from the front door or wherever they came in and show the routine. It's interesting how Jan picked up about the hairdryer. You asking really good questions, narrowing down into a routine, you begin to pick up things that people wouldn't verbalize to you, but they show you by walking around their own home and saying, this is what I do, this is what I look at, whatever. And I do remember a number of times when we'd been around the house and we'd sit down for the conversation, and I'd look at him and I'd go, we were here an hour ago. This is the same consultation as before. There's the same tree in the garden, the same, it's like deja vu. And we'd have a day where quite definitely there was a theme. I go, what's going on? And he'd say, Gina, that's what I'm working on. That was his issue. It was playing out. It was almost like, thank you very much, these 6 clients. You are showing me what's showing up in my world. It was amazing. And I have seen, unless you are doing, as Jan says about the pattern, unless we are doing 6 in a day, or you're doing several in a week, you don't necessarily pick that up. You may do, but it's interesting. And that happened more than once, where everybody had the same issue. It was all about ancestors, all about parents. And he said, that's what I'm working on. So I'm now going to suggest, hopefully you're all going to stay with us, you're 32 of you. I'm going to suggest that we get for, I think 20 minutes is a good time. And in 3, I think 3 of you, because that way you can share, 4 might be just too many. I'll send you off into breakout rooms of 3. And if for some reason somebody doesn't join a room, because whatever reason, and then there's only 2 of you, well, there's only 2. If you end up with 2 people not joining you, I think you can contact the host and then I can add you to another room. So don't worry. I know that you all haven't got your cameras on, but it would be nice to have your cameras on when you're just a group of 3. And I recommend that you share your approach, if you have a checklist or not, and share your knowledge. Jan, have you got any comments to add to our brief of what we're going to do in the next 20 minutes as a group of 3?
Not really. So it's better if I do my comments afterwards, how I do it. So I don't want to prime people what's the best way to do it, but I'll make some comments later. All
right, then, okay. So in your 3, you might find you have a pattern of all doing the same thing, or you learn some little nugget from someone, and then maybe one of the 3 of you would like to share some highlights when we come back. Let's just see what we've got time for. So are you all up for that?
Yep.
Yeah, we're fine.
Fantastic. So I'm now going to do breakout rooms, and if there's 30,
make sure you unmute yourself, the mics.
Oh, people, when they get into the rooms, they will do. So now, as I'm going to do that, now this is where the recording goes on pause. Welcome back, everybody, from your breakout rooms. Let me just do a time check here. 45. Okay. So if we keep ourselves on time for our 30-minute lunch break, we've got 15 minutes, but because we started a bit late, or we run over. And who'd like to share something they got from their discussion that they didn't already know, or something that reinforced what you're doing, that reinforced or highlighted? Yes, Suzanne.
I found it very useful what Vicky was saying about map dowsing, because I dowse in, I normally dowse for entities and I dowse for other things, both for the people and for the building and the land. But I hadn't considered just dowsing from the floor plan that I actually asked people for, which is kind of obvious. So that was extremely helpful.
Okay, great. Lovely. Okay, I'm just going to changing things on here. How do I do that? Okay, anybody else? Participant want to share, or put your hand up if you want to share, or sorry, I'm moving around here trying to remove spotlight. Sorry, I couldn't do that.
Gina, yep.
Yep.
Yeah, we kind of shared and confirmed, which was nice, because that whatever is going on, no matter how much kind of feng shui you're doing, unless you've got the absolute bases sorted out of any, let's call it negative energy or entity energy or ghost spirit activity that's stuck, it doesn't matter how much feng shui you do of whatever system, black hat, classical, it's not going to be as effective because it will be influenced by those energies. So one really does have to deal with and release, or get the client to release their mirrored inner ghost, from the house. And then you use feng shui, for activating, enhancing, symbolism, etc., etc. So And that was great, because I've not come across anyone talking that same kind of language, but that was confirmed in our breakout group.
So you had the right group, the right people talking the same language.
Yeah.
As it works out. Yeah, one of the things that came out of our discussion was the right client gets the right consultant.
Sure.
Even if you feel a bit scared or put off, or you are the right person for them. It's usually, and I said that was one of my biases, one of my beliefs.
Actually, one, if I can say on that, Gina, I had one client or a couple, and I went into huge fear because they were two top American West Coast psychologists, and they wanted a consultation, and I thought, well, what? And yet I just stuck to what I knew, what I connected with, and the difference it made to their lives. It was like they were going like, really? Because you were pointing out what was obvious to me, and then I wrote a whole thesis on it, which got me through my psychotherapy postgrad diploma sort of thing. But it was like that fear initially, but you know, who am I to Feng Shui or whatever, two top US psychologists, because you know what they're like, you know, it's like, and this guy's written books, and so it's like really important to stick to what you know, connect with your inner power, and just speak your truth, you know. And so
has anybody else been in that position where they felt overwhelmed by that client?
I'll go next. So, confirm the same two points that you mentioned. You know, you need to kind of be careful how you choose your clients. So I spent a bit of time, got a little checklist on who do I accept. I'm very, I used to take any clients now, but now I'm kind of more discerning, because I want easy clients basically. But I like challenging cases. So easy clients, challenging cases, And I agree with you, Christian. So you need to challenge yourself. But remember, we know more than everybody else, you know, because we've been doing it for a long time. So, you know, you definitely know more than that. But so I've kind of like two checklists, and we talked with Liz and Brenda about this. So my checks are, you know, a distinct between home, personal, and work, but now they're kind of overlapping. And depending on what's happening, I might have 100 to 200 items on each list, but we all have that, you know, in each aspect in Feng Shui is a kind of checklist point. So, and then I have a checklist also for people's needs or kind of issues. So, you know, I've got a checklist for selling homes, so checklist for, you know, fertility issues. So kind of different things. So just general checklist for environment. And obviously in this is like, you know, as Christian said, you know, any negative influences, you need to check with that, you know, that's kind of on top of my list. And and this is I got from a book called Checklist, actually. That's in my talk that I mentioned earlier. 9 items. Don't go too big, because then your brain won't be able to kind of process that. You can have loads of 9 items list. So I've got 9 items for selling a house, but underneath that, I've got another 100 items that if those 9 items kind of checklist points don't work, I'll go deeper. And the same for anything else. So for bedroom, I'll have probably 50 different checklist points, but I'll go to a bed. I was saying to my colleagues, I'll go for bed. Just for bed, I have 9 items. And then I go from bed, and one of them is a mattress. And for mattress, I've got 9 items. Because some of my clients want to spend a lot of money on the mattress, and they need to know. So I've researched that, and I've got a kind of a very deep checklist for just how to choose a mattress. So, but also we spoke that, you know, kind of listening to people is very important, because if you let people talk, they tell you everything. And then from that, you can elicit metaphors or mindset, and then you can see whether they're reflected in the environment or not. And that's the way of checking, because people can tell you one thing, but the environment is telling another thing. And obviously, you know, because we see other things. So, you know, kind of invisible influences, you know, past lives, other things that kind of most people are not even aware. So kind of we're expanding their point of view, And obviously looking at other things. So, you know, Brenda and Liz, they kind of send checklist kind of questionnaires before the consultation. I usually don't do it. I just talk to people online, on the phone, So kind of look at astrology, other things, so kind of bigger point of view. So from different aspects, you can get as much as information as possible, and then when you're there, you can double check whether it's relevant or not. So,
Okay, wonderful, Jan. And It's interesting you were talking about those, you've got a list of 9. I don't know whether you got it from the checklist manifesto, but which I also read, which I thought was line changing. But anyway, in the day when we got so much publicity, it was through tips, 10 top tips, 9 tips, 7 tips about, you know, romance during Valentine's, and the media just took it and put it in the paper. So having things itemized like that makes it easy for, if you then repurpose that, and this is knowledge we may share, it's an easy editorial. It's already, it's not a big paragraph they have to edit. It's tips and pointers that are easy to put out into media. Just saying there. Okay.
And that's one idea for the future. I mean, at some point, because the technology is advancing and algorithms are very easy to create, you know, if we have like 100 top consultants on this planet and they all pull the checklist, an algorithm will sort it out and we'll have some kind of consensus. And probably blockchain is one of them. And in the future, we'll use blockchains for finding consensus. And in that way, then you can create an app. So you're working with an app, and in your bedroom, the app will scan your environment and it'll just mark different things in the environment. So that's the future. It's definitely, we can do it physically, you know, if I write all my checklists and we'll just start comparing, and then we see what's important, what's not important, and then we can kind of discussion why. Then we can actually come to the kind of almost ultimate checklist, you know, if you like, you know, because there will be so much consensus, and then it's easy to check. And then we can verify with some data or research, and then we have kind of confounding evidence, if you like, for kind of ideal checklists. So I hope, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, well, I think that sounds very exciting, sharing the knowledge. I'm sure everybody learned some little thing or was affirmed in some way. Does anybody else want to share their experience or anything that they got? I don't know whether you want to put a hand up or just unmute yourself and speak. Put it on gallery view. Is Diane's waving? Diane, yes, speak. Have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Go ahead, Diane.
I mean, I think for me, it's also about empowering the client and not going in particularly as an expert. You've got the knowledge, but it's a co-creative experience, and that might be the clients I engage with. But I love the idea of checklists, and I think for me, it's important to keep them in their place. I don't mean not use them. I just mean that you're still in touch with that intuitive integrity that you have, and use them when appropriate. But yeah, it's that co-creation process of empowerment. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't spotlight you. Anybody else want to share something they learned or something that was affirmed for them? Suzanne, are you back again? Yeah. Lovely. Unmute yourself. Oh, hang on, I asked to unmute. You should come up.
Unmute, yes. Vincent mentioned that he asks people when he goes to look at gardens, who is going to look after the garden? Which is, I think a wonderful question. I just love that. I really do, because that would be the thing that makes so much difference about whatever else you said. I mean, really.
Is such a brilliant thing, you know. I've had a mind, I might like to keep chickens. I'm not definite on that. I'm going to explore. And so seeking advice, somebody said, you've got to have an end game. What are you going to do at the end with the chickens that you've named? You know, are you going to kill them or what are you going to do? I thought it was interesting.
Chickens are very, very easy to keep.
What about when they come to the end of their life, Vincent?
Well, if you're going to keep them domestically, they'll actually keep laying for 3 to 4 years without any difficulty at all. And then they just die a natural death.
Oh, that's good. As long as
they're very different to broiler chickens, which are kept for their meat and for putting in the pot type of thing. Okay. The domestic chickens are for laying eggs, and they'll lay happily.
Very lovely. But it's this thinking of consequences, isn't it? As you're doing something, and then the next question is, so it's not just.
They're very satisfying. You feed them, you give them water, you clean them out, they give you eggs. And you get so many eggs you share with the neighbors.
I'm so tempted.
And I've heard that they all have kind of individual personalities. I've never had chickens personally, but evidently they actually are quite, they have their little characters and they can lay eggs for a lot longer than 3 or 4 years, apparently.
Yeah.
There's an organisation that rescues chickens that otherwise would be, for the chop, and they can carry on laying.
They're chickens.
Anyway, that's enough of chickens, I suppose.
They're
Developing
chickens.
a resilient life and looking at my own food supplies and my own food chain in the gardens. Anyway, that is an aside point, but good point. Great. Anybody else wanted to have a share?
Just to come back with our group, Gina, we're not going in as Feng Shui consultants. We all kind of agree on that. It's about what is the person's issue and what solutions can we bring with our skills. So not to go in with our Feng Shui, our compass, and so on, but to really delve deep into and helping the client to understand their own part in it, take responsibility, and they to help them empower themselves in the solutions. So we're not going in to fix it as consultants. I think that came out really strongly,
and it's come out again, like with Di's point about the empowerment aspect. And I think there's something, when I was talking earlier on in the opening, I think needs are getting more complex. The homes are getting more complex. And back in the day, whenever that was, you go and have a massage. And then then the massage therapists learned aromatherapy. They learned different types of massage. So you present in front of someone who has a toolbox about 10 different ways of helping you relax. And I think that we're moving into an era, and maybe we get to a point where we can share this, as well as basic Feng Shui knowledge and energy work. What else are people skilling themselves up with? And this is what helps practitioners present in a unique way, because they're drawing on 10 years experience in this area and recent training in psychotherapy or whatever. And then we present with a wide variety of tools and life skills and wisdom. And, those of us who've been, people who've been doing it decades, perhaps different to someone who's come in with a couple of years experience, but they're bringing their own life tools and skills. And I think that's a good thing to recognize, that you may only have a couple of years experience in Feng Shui, but you've got a couple of decades experience in something else, and you bring in that expertise. So you're presenting yourself as quite an experienced person, but we're adding all those tools together. And I think that's kind of the modern Feng Shui, the old Chinese name, but a modern Feng Shui is, what are we presenting with? As you just saying, Christian, what is it they need? And what have I got that will help? And top of that list could be a very compassionate listening ear, right at the top, before anything else. So yes, as really recognizing the multifaceted beings that we are, all the tools that we have. And in that moment, that's why being good in yourself, energetically clear, unstressed, present, and feeling into exactly what people need, and being surprised. I see, this is what's needed now, rather than I know already, and then where these appear on a checklist, I can't say, but I'm gonna, is there any one more point that we want to make before look at the gallery?
Can I just say, I think the checklist, like you say, does depend on the individual's knowledge. And like you say, you are usually guided to where you can be best help. I found I had a checklist when I first started doing Feng Shui on what was most important. And then it started changing as I started learning different things, because you're adding to your knowledge constantly. And obviously you're guided as well by the answers to the questions that the client's giving you. Yeah.
Being in the moment, responding all the time to what they need, and really listening. Absolutely. Okay, that's great. Unless there's anything else is pressing, and I'm going to move towards closing this session. Anybody else want to say anything? Are we all complete? All right. Was that enjoyable? Insightful? Yeah, few thumbs going up. Wonderful. Well, we haven't come out of this conversation with a checklist, but I think from what I observed in my experience in the room that I joined, is that we all have got little nuances and things that we can add. And the more we share, the more we build or get more confident on what we know, or become consciously competent in what we're unconsciously competent in. We don't realize what we know. So I think the more opportunities we have to share, the better. If anybody wants to, I think what we can do is create a blog post with some of the checklist resources and then add to it. You can add, and then it becomes a kind of a data point of people adding and commenting. And I think that would be a good place for us to start. We can continue this conversation another time. Okay, so it's 12:49 and we're now into our refreshment break. If you're up for a 25-minute refreshment break, then we're back in on time at 1:15. So if we can aim for that, that would be brilliant. And go and have some fast food slowly, or whatever you need to do in the break. And then we're coming back, and Carol is going to talk us through. It's going to be lovely. She's going to talk us through a consultation, and then we're going to hear from Christian about his new book. It's going to be a really exciting couple of sessions, and then you can go out in the sunshine. So we'll see you in 25 minutes, everybody. Is that okay?
Can I say just a quick thing in relation to what you said earlier about the state as a consultant whenever you're doing Feng Shui? So over the years, I noticed one little small distinction that makes a big difference, at least for me. So obviously I'm going in a good state, I'm relaxed, I'm kind of empty. I don't have kind of any preconceived ideas, although from the interview, I know more or less what people want. But I noticed that when the concentration is good or very good, I experience unexpected and unplanned or unpredictable things. When these things happen, I know I'm on something. Because if they don't happen, it might be that I'm projecting my sort of worldviews on people's homes and lives. But if the unexpected things happen, that kind of tells you that maybe you're onto something, because you wouldn't expect that, you wouldn't plan it. Yeah. So those kind of little things that happen during the consultation.
An example, Jan, of an unexpected thing? What's an example of an unexpected thing from that consultation?
Oh, so recently I had a consultation, and there was basically no problem. And the guy was really happy. He was just checking things, but I didn't know that, obviously. And he was super happy. So obviously those little things that I suggested, but the client was just like to have consultation. He didn't really have major issues as such. So that was kind of like, and I was just like, it was a short consultation, by the way. So I like that sort of clients. And like,
You would, yeah, and that's your sort of client, isn't it? You like things like that. Fantastic. So, okay, so we're starting our afternoon session now. We were just talking about Feng Shui case studies, and Carol has volunteered to present today, and we do invite people to think about how they could do a consultation. She had a really interesting one. Carol's member of the Feng Shui Society Executive Committee. She's based in Chesterfield in the middle of the country, although she travels all over. She's kind of based in that area, combining classical and intuitive Feng Shui, blending the East and West, also presenting 9-star key astrology. And she's been she's been a Feng Shui practitioner for 15 years. And Carol, we're grateful for that you put this presentation together, and you're going to show a few slides, aren't you? So let's give Carol a warm welcome this afternoon. And I'm going to remove the spotlight on me, and I'll spotlight you. Carol, let me just original. Okay, Carol, spotlight for everyone. You're unmuted, I think. Are you? You unmuted?
Yes, because I've just unmuted myself.
You started your screen sharing. Fantastic. Well done. Lovely. Okay, I'm going on mute.
Second. Okay. Afternoon, everybody. I'm going to be taking you through a client case study. Obviously, as Gina said, it is for the purpose of learning and sharing our experiences. So hope everybody else has a go at this as well. I chose this particular consultation because of the scale of the findings. So what I'm going to do is take you through and introduce my client, the actions I took, how I worked with my client, which is quite interesting given the checklist discussion that we've been doing. My recommendations to the client and the surprising results, and then some conclusions that I came to on the unusual aspects of the experience. Okay, so the company. The company was established in the 1980s. It was bought out by a private limited company in the early 2000s. It specialised in producing accurate measuring equipment and tools. I'm going to keep some information vague for confidentiality purposes. One other really relevant piece of information is that its location was in the edge of a city, not saying what city, with the main railway line running to the rear of the property. So that'll become relevant a bit later on. How they got in contact with me, the consultation came via a referral from a friend. So the company PA contacted me, and her and the managing director invited me to come and meet them. Initially, I did send out a pre-consultation questionnaire and asked on that questionnaire the reasons for the consultation. And those were to reorganise. They were looking at reorganising and restructuring. They were looking at doing some staff changes. They wished to bring in new people with new ideas. The current staff were resistant to the change, and they needed to increase the motivation of the staff. So obviously the change was probably part of the problem with the motivation. In their words, they wanted an adrenaline shot to the business. Also, they wanted to modernise and upgrade the offices, create a more pleasant working environment. And the scope of the consultation was literally the office site only. So it was the ground floor was the manufacturing and the offices were upstairs, but they weren't directly underneath each other. So on my initial visit to the company, I was met by the PA. She gave me a tour of the workshop and the offices, again stressing the workshop won't be included in the consultation. The PA then took me to the managing director just to meet him. He seemed quite willing for me to help, though the impression I got was he was unsure of what I could do to actually help. The PA to me was the driving force behind the whole of the consultation, if I'm honest. He was just going along with it. I think the reason why will become apparent at the end, probably. So at that point, I requested the office floor plans, dates of birth of key managers for astrology purposes, just to ensure how they fitted in their respective roles. Permission was sought for that and granted for that information. The only restriction I did have was that they didn't want the employees knowing who I was and why I was there. So, I've forgotten to do this, sorry. So, given the confidentiality that was actually required, and the amount of people on site, I decided to work on the plans from home. With hindsight, this was exactly the correct decision, given the scale of the findings that you'll see. So I doused on the floor plans with a pendulum, locating geopathic stress and to highlight any crossing points. Obviously, the crossing points are going to release information on specific problem areas. I also at home assess the key managers in their current roles. Good. So after doing the work at home, I arranged a second site visit, agreeing with the PA that we go around the office together to identify where Feng Shui changes were required. The PA would take the notes of any changes that needed to be implemented, and she would also be ensuring that those recommendations were actioned. Again, proving that the PA was the one behind it all, really. So we went on doing the tour with all this information, her taking the notes. Started with the MD's office, open plan area, and then the conference and meeting rooms. So, my findings and recommendations. The key managers, so this was also on the second site visit. I met with the MD and the PA to review the findings from the work I'd done at home and also what I'd carried out with the PA that day. And I'm just going to stick to the main findings and recommendations. So for the key managers, the 9-star key assessment was completely a non-issue to me. All managers were in the suited roles and they were an excellent fit according to 9-star key astrology. So no issues there at all. Next, the work I did at home on the geopathic stress. In total, I found 15 lines affecting the whole of the office areas. So everybody's office, the open plan office, were all affected by geopathic stress. And I just want to refer your minds back to, I did actually specify the location of the company, namely having a main railway line running behind the premises. Obviously, it's known that railway lines are notorious for affecting surrounding buildings with geopathic stress. And to be honest, 15 lines is the most I've ever located on any building. So I explained to the MD and the PA how these lines can affect people with regard to performance, lacking motivation, being fearful, and resistant to change. Everything they were experiencing anyway, in any case. So ordinarily, the event of actually restructuring a company can foster uncertainty in staff members, but the sheer scale of the geopathic stress I found, I felt it was a key part or a massive part in emphasising the negativity within the building. One particular station, desk seating position, I pointed out to them that it had 5 lines of geopathic stress crossing through it. And I just said to them, here, the individual could even become ill. At this point, it was quite interesting because the managing director and the PA just sat there and looked at each other and said, well, we joke about this particular seat because anyone who sits there either leaves, gets fired, or becomes ill. And between us, we call it the death chair. So it's always nice to have things acknowledged for you on a consultation. So recommendation, take that seating position completely away. Nobody must sit there. It must be permanently moved. even though obviously the lines were now cleared. Okay, so then gave some feedback on the managing director's office that was also affected by 2 lines of geopathic stress, exactly where there were boxes piled high behind his office door. So on entering his office every day, the door would go so far to open and then it would stop abruptly. So that obviously was creating restrictions, stagnant energy, and subconsciously walking through that door every day with that restriction, he would be acknowledging that on a subconscious level on a daily basis. So those sort of things. Also, one of these lines was going through his desk as well. The geopathic stress obviously was cleared, but he was the most important person in that business. So if he's experiencing this geopathic stress as well, that can have a negative effect on his thinking, his decision making, and he's the most important person in that company. Recommendations there were that his office needed to be decluttered, organised properly, because it wasn't, and suitable storage found for the boxes. Next, we moved on to the meeting conference room. Now, the major problem here in terms of symbology and in Feng Shui terms was actually a painting of a ship. The ship was in a storm. It had, and this was a big painting, it was in a storm with waves crashing onto the deck. It was pretty awful because when I walked in, it was the first thing I saw. So the artwork, as we know, in a room can affect the people. In this case, negatively, with possible feelings of being overwhelmed, feeling in danger, fighting to survive. It can affect different people in different ways on a subconscious level. Somebody might find that painting invigorating, but the very fact that it was in a meeting room where groups of people would be coming together and meeting, then I don't think was really very conducive to having some good meetings there. The picture had to be removed and replaced with some successful illustrations of artwork. Recommendations were really people meeting, shaking hands, agreeing, and smiling, all happy of what their agreements were. Or maybe some artwork and photographs of the business successful ventures that have happened in the past. So then we came to the open plan office space. Again, massive geopathic stress that was there, all cleared. Fortunately, the whole floor was already on the budget for being redecorated. So I advise to keep the paint colours fairly neutral and choose some splashes of colour. So where there was the sales and marketing areas, some splashes of red, green, technical design areas, that sort of thing. I tweaked some specific seating positions and advised to introduce some plants for colour, to bring some life into the offices and to neutralise any Shar-Chi. So that was pretty much okay there. So the results and company feedback. It came in 2 sorts of stages. The results I received, the first stage, the PA asked me to return to the site to check the recommendations were properly implemented. So as I was being shown around the office, the PA was actually called to the phone. So she asked me to just continue going around and checking all that had been implemented was okay. And as I was doing that, an employee caught me and said, she asked, are you responsible for the changes that have been happening here? So I just said, well, sort of, why? And she replied, well, it just feels so much better. And that's how she said it. It just feels so much better. So that was great confirmation of people felt the change within the environment. It wasn't until a year later that I got the next lot of feedback. I was asked to return to have a meeting with the managing director. I wasn't given any reason for the meeting, so I must admit I was a bit apprehensive about it. And I'd just like to note at this point, originally, there was never any specific financial reasons stated for the actual consultation. So this was when the financial picture was actually revealed. So the managing director shook my hand. He just immediately said, I really don't understand what you did, but it worked. And he said, I didn't tell you at the time, but the company was in debt to the bank for in excess of 800,000. Within the next few months, we'll have cleared that. So I just wanted to thank you personally for your help. I wish I'd have worked on commission really on that one, but anyway, there we go. Then other than that, just two other positive results came out of that, for me only really. They were that I received 2 additional employee consultations, one from the actual PA and one from the PA's colleague. I think she was a friend in the business, so eventually she was told about it. Okay. So, my conclusions. I actually felt that the effects of clearing the geopathic stress did the majority of the job for me. I believe that the clutter, the negativity being felt by the employees were both classic effects of geopathic stress. So there were sort of knock-on effects from that. The ship in the storm painting in the meeting room, probably not. But in this case, I just felt that 80% of the job was resolved by clearing the geopathic stress, which was probably 20% of the work that I'd done. So, did the healing, the health of the business include financially too? Although at the time I knew nothing about the debt, and I was quite pleased I didn't know anything about the debt, because I think that would have been a bit of pressure, knowing they were in that sort of financial trouble. But I think what we were talking about through our get-togethers just at the previous session as well, the intention was there for the financial improvement as far as the MD and the PA was concerned. I didn't obviously need to know about it. So at the outset, I didn't know anything about it. I just did what was there and what I saw in front of me. And again, this is how we're all working. So is it better to work blind? We were just talking about finding reasons, delving down, but sometimes do you need all the information? Can you just do the job on everything that you see and observe and then follow it up and see how it's going? In this case, I didn't follow up until the year later. Quite often, as we've mentioned as well, clients don't give us the full picture. They don't feel comfortable to give us the full picture. And in this case, I don't think I would have ever received the full picture unless things hadn't turned around. Okay, so in closing, I've taken you through my consultation and the scale of the findings with regard to the geopathic stress, the surprising financial result, and some of the conclusions that I reached. So if anyone else has any comments or any questions, please feel free.
Well done, Carol. That was great. That was really great. It is good to reflect on the learning and that 80-20 you mentioned, all the efforts and the fantastic result you had. Yes, it's not likely somebody shares that when you walk in the door, is it? That kind of financial picture. Brilliant. Does anybody want to ask a question or got a comment?
Yeah, Carol, when did you last check the geopathic stress lines?
That particular company?
Yeah.
When did I last check them? I haven't, because I haven't been called back. And what happened, the link was the actual PA. And I did a consultation for her. Now, when I went back the year later, she was still at the company. But she actually left. And as I said, she was the driving force behind them having the consultation in the first place anyway. So when she left, she moved down to Oxford and she set up herself in a sort of print design business, working for herself, designing.
Because what I really want to ask you is how much of her, that makes more sense now, what's her relationship to the geopathic stress? Was she creating it? The geopathic lines? Because there's always a correlation between the physical earth, Hartman Curry, and all the other lines, and the consciousness of the person. They're not separate. So how much was it her stuff?
Now, I'm not so sure how much was her stuff and how much was the managing director's stuff.
Yeah.
Because it seemed to me that both of them were quite disorganized, I suppose flying a bit by the seat of the pants, really. But I don't know. I think his life was very messy because he did a lot of traveling as well. His wife, she lived in the south or something. So there were other things I found out at a later stage, which again, I can't really say, but the relationships weren't very healthy.
Yeah.
They were being reflected probably in the business as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is very much what I find. And if I may, and apologise for printing out your plan.
Yeah, that's fine.
But if I can say I've doused it while you were talking, the geopathic lines are 50% still there, but the psychic geopathic are 100% gone.
Right.
And that's all that matters when I'm working. So that's kind of what you've done, because you've dealt with the two people that were holding the psychic dynamic issue that feeds into the earth energy and perpetuates it. And when that's done, you can still measure the lines with a pendulum. You know, mine's swinging all over your lines. When I douse them, they don't respond as being an issue. That's the difference.
Right. Can I just say that actual floor plan that I set out, I actually recreated that because I couldn't take anything away.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that's fully accurate, but I'm depicting where things were coming from, where all the lines were coming from.
But you're receiving that information into your system anyway, so it doesn't matter what you draw, you'd be reflecting that pattern. So that works. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Wonderful. And that was great. And there's another question. Who had the other question? I'm looking at the show the grid view. Somebody else had their hands up. I'm trying to find a way of seeing the whole thing, but my view has changed. Here we go, gallery. Okay.
There's a question in the chat.
Okay.
Did you have to do anything else with the railway line?
Yeah.
I literally just protected it when I did the healing, but I didn't do anything else with the railway line. And one of the curious things that I did actually feel, and probably Christians actually explained this as well, because they didn't want the actual manufacturing area doing. They only wanted the officers doing. So as far as they were concerned, the manufacturing was working fine. It was just the office areas, which was upstairs, but still in the same building.
Yeah, human dynamics.
There was another question. What school of Feng Shui did you use, or just geopathic stress?
I didn't use a lot of Feng Shui, to tell you the truth, with the geopathic stress clearing that energy. And this was part of your working instinctively at what you're actually finding, and that takes you off to everything. I can't actually remember, mapping out the different areas, or else I'd have probably done that on that diagram. But because I couldn't take anything away, I don't actually know what I did there. But because this was such a massive effect and findings, that's why I just wanted to put it across, because it was something that was a great achievement and achieved a lot, but it wasn't, I was just following the information I was being given, or that was coming to me as I was finding it.
Yeah, and that's the case for being present and responding to what comes. And this is the balance of the checklist and the procedure, and being completely available in the moment to read the energy and go with what your intuition says, and go with the flow, and going, as you just said, go with what's presented to you.
Yeah.
Well done. Yeah, well done. That's great. Well, if anybody else wants to put forward a case study, you can see the kind of format that we've got there, and some notes on a PowerPoint, and it's great to share, isn't it? It's great to share. And let's give Carol a thank you. Well done, Carol.
Good job.
That was great. Great consultation and great presentation. Well done. That's lovely. And we're going to move on now. Where am I? Spotlight me, and spotlight Carol. Spotlight. Get ready for Christian. Sorry, I'm moving around all my gadgets here. Gallery. Where are you, Christine? Add spotlight. Okay. So our last presentation today, last but not least, Christine Kyriakou. I'm sure quite a few know him. Again, been around the Feng Shui Society and Feng Shui for many, many moons. Christine, architect, house whisperer, philosopher, author, storyteller, spatial psychotherapist. It's a beautiful terminology. Musician, composer, filmmaker, Feng Shui, Vastu, geomancy consultant, and like Jan, Christine was a teacher in my Feng Shui school back in the day, back in the 90s, and appeared on international television and radio since 1993. inspirational speaker on topics as the relationship of sound and sacred space. And that's what I particularly remember you for teaching. Beautiful architectural harmonics and music, geomancy and feng shui. His work with the spatial energy of buildings engages with how aspects of acoustics, vibration, music and harmonics relate to sacred geometry in architectural spaces. And he has a new book, don't you, Christian?
Well, it's in the writing. It's
in the writing. Okay. Well, I'm handing over to you. We're going to give you a welcome, and I'll leave the scene and let you go and share. And you've got. We're going to just do a time check before you start. It's nearly 5 to the hour. Are you okay till about past?
Sure. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well. Yes, the book is called Whispers of the Ancients. It's taken a long time to write because it keeps changing its story as I get downloads from where it's come from. And essentially where it's come from, I don't believe this, excuse me. That phone never rings. I can't switch it off.
Spirit's calling.
Oh.
Spirit's calling.
It's my mother, I'm not there.
Yeah, someone from another dimension, which of course is what this is all about. So it's all about the knowledge and the light codes. 12 light codes, could be less, could be more, that we all embody from the beginning of creation. And hands up who remembers them. Yeah, I know a few of you do. I know Jan, definitely, we've got that connection there. And it's quite extraordinary once you understand what they are. And hopefully I'll be able to share some of that. So we all hold this knowledge, and it's knowledge of light and sound. Light codes are about light and sound, which is all vibration. And whether it's music, color, it's all vibration. And really it's about, do we remember what they are? If we're connected intuitively, like when we're working with consultations, like Carol just shared with us, it doesn't matter where you're coming from, what system or hat you've got on, you're connecting in the present moment. And that's the key thing. In the present moment, we have access to all knowledge. And what, how this story, which is a galactic story of a galactic war that happened 5 million years ago, and I was involved in that planet, which was about to be destroyed by warfare and had to travel to Earth to bring the light codes for regeneration. So this is like the bigger picture of the story. And but I need to backtrack to a very specific date of 1993, where suddenly all these compositions were just cascading down. I've always been composing, playing music, as some of you know, and teaching it. But at that specific date, within a period of around 2 or 3, maybe 4 weeks, 5 or 6 compositions were downloaded. And I thought, this is nice, you know. And if you're connected with music and composition, you know that it just comes out of nowhere. Mozart talks about this, who's in the book, and lots of other composers, that these fragments of music, light, knowledge just cascade from heaven, from the cosmos, whatever you want to call the, you know, the firmament, the creation, and they land on you and they're expressed through us. So, you know, no one's composing, you know, I don't compose, it's composed through you, especially if you can get out of the way. And some extraordinary stuff, you know, does come through if you take your own stuff, your own ego out of the way. Of course, you use some of that to interpret and so on. So so these pieces came through, and my brother, who's a composer, music producer, helped me put them together. I just played them on a piano, recorded them, and we spent months putting them together. I think it was a 5 or 6 track CD, really nicely sort of put together. And it sat in a drawer for 25 years. Hardly anybody heard it. So, so a couple of years later, I met the Feng Shui team and Gina and the Feng Shui network. And then I think it was a year or so after that, I went to a geomancy weekend with Richard Cratemore. I'm sure some of you know Richard. And I was just playing some of the pieces on the piano, and a couple of women there just said, "What are you playing?" And I sort of flippantly just said something I composed a little earlier or something silly like that. And they recognized the music. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. And they told me the story of the galactic warfare. The planet was about to explode, and my mission was to bring these light codes to Earth. So I thought, okay, that's a very interesting story. You know, what have you been smoking? What have you been on? You know, this is a weekend away, and you know, geomancy week, you know, whatever. But that's kind of my nature to sort of, you know, play with that. Anyway, so one of them and Richard put their foreheads on mine, and that moment totally transformed my life, because I didn't see what was happening. I was there. I felt it, smelt it. It was as if a stargate had opened with that contact of the foreheads, and it took me back to that 5 million year event, and I could see the people, my companion, wife, whatever, children, 3 children, and I was having to say goodbye, walking across the desert sands. I can still smell it, feel it, towards the light ships to come to Earth. 3 light ships, I was flying one of them. So that memory, it wasn't a memory, it was a true experience that was still, and it's still resonating now, which is driving this entire project. So jumping forward 25 years, it kind of woke up again. So this was about 2.5 years ago. And I thought, I've got to create, I mean, I love creating movies and movie clips, as you know, you've probably seen many on my website. So I started to build up all these movie clips of each of the events and the journey and so on. And each of the compositions and the stories on Earth, meeting the various people on Earth and the various sacred sites on Earth, bringing together the sacred geometry, the music, the philosophy, the medicine, you know, which of course is where the light codes express themselves, which are all about harmony, of course, music, harmony, light, and so on. So I've started putting all these together, and my nephew and niece are composers as well, my brother's children. And I said, you know, will you orchestrate, you know, the pieces for me into fully blown orchestral pieces? That's what they do. And it was a no for about 6 months, and then eventually said, yes, okay, we'll do it. And so that started 2.5 years ago. And again, jumping forward to now, we've got 33 music tracks, because more have been germinated, if you like. A CD or an album of 22 tracks is being pre-mastered at the moment, hopefully for release in the summer, possibly at the same time with the book. That's been the idea. So the music has grown, and I'm going to play you 2 tracks with video in a moment. And then realizing that, okay, to produce, like, of course, you know, I love all these 12-part, you know, multiple, you know, movie series that we see, you know, on TV. And I thought, great, let's do a 12-part movie series. Now, that's not very practical as a sort of one-man band to do that. You need a pretty big production company to do that. So my partner, who works with me doing very similar stuff with energy and feng shui, just said, okay, you need to write the book so that you can get the story clear and get the detail exactly as you want it. So I thought, oh, not another book. I'd written House Whisperer, which took it takes a lot, as some of you know. I know Gina knows how much involved in writing a book. It's a lot of work. And so I started writing the book about a year and a half ago, possibly longer. And it's driven my editor totally mad because I keep changing the story. And I'm saying, well, the story is changing as it's developing. And as I'm writing, I'm getting downloads from all these people on Earth in the past, including Sunyer at Rennes-le-Chateau, and, telling me the secret of why he became wealthy. And Mozart, who killed Mozart, if you're aware of that story. And, Plato, who's always been my... one of my mentors. So the communication, that direct spirit communication with them, is enriching the story and giving me downloads that you won't find in the history books. So all this is going into the book. That's why it keeps getting longer and bigger, and it's up to about 120,000 pages at the moment. So I thought, whatever it is, it is. So that's a kind of background to it, but essentially it incorporates, like we say, what is feng shui about? Where did the Chinese feng shui come from? It's all about the balance. It's all about harmony, the balance and dynamics of yin and yang. The warfare that's going on at the moment, or conflict, whatever you want to call it, whatever you believe is happening, and also over the last few hundred years, few thousand years, there's always been that sort of conflict. And that is from that shift of dynamic from duality, from unity to duality. So in a sense, what's going on now and what we deal with in feng shui and consultations is getting the dynamics in balance, identifying what the issues are running in people's lives. Like if there's something going on in a business, is going on in their personal lives. You can't separate the two. That's why whenever someone says, oh, can you do my business? I say, only if I can do your home as well. Otherwise, I'm not doing you. So that's crucial to do the key people at least, which is what Carol was talking about, the two key people. So, so everything we look at, in feng shui, the astrology, the astronomy, it's all contained from that original knowledge. Knowledge of the stars are there. Knowledge of sacred sites are crucial. What we've been told in history about what the pyramids are for, and there are thousands of pyramids, and I'm sure you're aware around the place. They are all stargates, either active or non-active, and there are a lot of them still active. And where they're most active at the moment is where there are wars, interestingly. So the currency of creation are the portals, the stargates, the wormholes, and it's this connection into and between other planetary bodies, other galaxies, other dimensions. And there are many dimensions existing at the same time. And so when we're working with clients, I'm sure we've always sometimes said to our client, or in our head, what planet are they on? Yeah, I've often said that, because it's like, where are you? What are you doing? So and we all live in different dimensions, but all those dimensions are running in parallel. So certainly when I'm working with a client, I'm looking at what's your other parallel realities. If I'm going to take you back on a quantum timeline to find out what has caused your issue, which is why you've called me, what's going on? So and the thing is, I would never say I'm an expert at regression or whatever, but as Gina mentioned, in the present moment, you're given anything and everything you need to know. You don't need to know, 4 pillars and flying star, which, I learnt and totally forgotten because I work the way I do. But the one thing I've always trusted, in fact, going right back to the early 70s when I spent 25 years in a philosophy school studying much of this, was meditation, present moment. And in that present moment, you're in a Akashic space that will give you everything you need to know about that client at that moment. And that's why I'll go into that stillness, and suddenly I'll be taken above the property. I look down, there's no house there because the house was built on a battlefield. And then I see the people, what they're wearing, how they're killing each other, and sometimes why the client has come back to rectify or make amends for the damage done in a previous lifetime. But all this just comes by being in the present moment. So what's happening there is we're not kind of looking at history or having to check out, the internet for what happened on this site. You're just connecting in the present moment that gives you access to all these other dimensions. So in a sense, that's kind of what I'm writing about, and that's what the 12-part movie series will be about, and we'll be starting as soon as the book is finished with the total story, and funding has been secured to produce this on a big scale, a 12-part sort of series. So it's really quite exciting because that's pretty mega. So Gina, I wanted to share something you mentioned right at the beginning, which is this lovely man. Do you remember this?
Oh my goodness, 25 years ago.
I know, 1996. So let me just play this because this is the whole. In fact, you can. This is the entire China video, but I've just taken it to that point.
Ooh.
And again, what if you really connect with? I forget his name. I've probably got it written down. You might know it, Gina. But if you really feel his energy, he is connecting to cosmic energy in his movements. Yeah. So let's just have a look, and then he does it. So what he's going to do is the Bagua Tai Chi, which he taught us how to do, if you remember, Gina. And then he does a bit outside. Here we go.
Uses the natural chi flows of energy for developing physical and spiritual well-being, personal awareness, and self-development. It is widely used in China. And for Feng Shui practitioners, it is of utmost importance to tune the human instrument to increase one's perception and sensitivity to the movements of energy in the environment. Masters of their art displayed with great skill and humility various Tai Chi movements. Here we see the Bagua Tai Chi, which takes one through the movements of the 8 compass directions of Feng Shui. Skillful demonstrations were displayed at every opportunity. The emperors of China were aware of the laws which govern the movements of the planets and the inherent harmony created by the music of the spheres. By acknowledging this fundamental importance of the nature of vibration, music was used to keep society in tune with the natural laws of the universe.
There we go. So incredible. I think he was about 80 when he was doing that Tai Chi.
He had a very boyish grin, but he was quite old.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so this kind of leads me on to the thing with music and China. And as you saw in that, well, it was actually coming on to that. So these were the set of bells that they found. I think they're like 2,000 years old or more. And these bells were used for taking around the province of China, so that every province and every musical instrument was in tune with the master tuning of the emperor, because then he could maintain control, whether it's for harmonious purpose or not. It's about control, because if you know the code, and this again we're going back to coding and light codes and creating energy codes and structures. So they needed to know that, and that was done through music, through harmonic, through frequency. And there's nothing different now, because all things are controlled through frequency. We're watching each other because of frequency of wavelength. So music is key to that, but music in the sense of harmonics. And depending what those harmonics are, you can create a structure. And when I'm teaching people how to create protection structures, I mean, essentially we don't need protection if we're connected to source. But if we do want to create a protective structure because someone's being attacked or for whatever reason, it's done by harmonic coding through frequency, pulse, rhythm, and melody. They're the three ingredients of creating an energetic shield for protection. And then, of course, the intention empowers it for whatever particular purpose you want. So, so this whole thing of frequency is crucial. And when we look at the whole thing of accessing sacred sites, again, let me share the screen on here. So when we look at images like this, gateways, so both these are in, on that trip to China. A gateway holds the code, the frequency. It's been specifically activated and programmed to say you can enter or you can't. And, when we go through into a building or to a sacred site, at the entrance, there's the genus loci, the guardian, of the spirit guardian of that place. And we have to ask permission to enter. And it's not about, oh, can I have permission to enter, please, sir? It's about if your frequency, again, we're back to harmonic, if your frequency is not in alignment with the frequency of that place or that sacred site or that building, it's going to fragment your energy field, and you're going to do damage to that site. So it's one of kind of mutual respect. So it's really important to again, fall still outside a sacred site, or whether it's Stonehenge, the Tor, Stone Circle, even your own home or someone else's home, and get a sense before we go in. What's the frequency? What's the story? What's the energy signature, the key signature, I call it, and to get a sense of that, and if there is a spirit guardian looking after it, to ask permission to come in. So these are all very important aspects of it. So so going back specifically to the book, this is the cover at the moment. Again, this keeps changing. So Whispers of the Ancient, an epic adventure through the weave of time. So this is a scene on planet Vesica, I'm calling it, as in Vesica Piscis, the sacred geometry. And you can see the futuristic buildings, the lady I'm leaving behind, family with children, and there's me sort of heading for one of the light ships. And you can see the Egyptian boat, the lake of Narayana, and pyramids, and there's actually three 3 lightships. And we've got various sacred sites on the back and so on. So I think here now, so everything I've told you, so we've got this sort of this journey to Earth. So this person, which I call Christo, and his partner, which we don't mention at the moment. So there's a bit of intrigue going on, and a bit of a love story going on, because he arrives on Earth, he crash lands, which is actually one of the memories of what happened. Crash landed the spaceship, and Christo ends up in a cave in Sintra in Portugal. And I don't know if you know it, but you're actually, I think you see a bit of it on the video. It's an initiation chamber, and goes down into a cave where he has to go through the remembering, and you know, that dark night of the soul, the journey back into oneself, because a lot has been forgotten coming through Earth's atmosphere, which of course either you're aware of it, or you can feel it, or if you actually go up and rise above it, which is something I do when I meditate in the morning, 4 or 5 in the morning, just to let you know that. And you can rise above it and actually feel the atmosphere, and it is a control grid. We have a control grid. You know, we're talking about geopathic stress in the Earth, but there's also a matching one above the Earth. And you can actually tune into it, and it's often been called the matrix or the control matrix, but it is an energetic structure that I was shown about 22 years ago from Masters in Spirit, where I get most of my downloads from. And then just before I finished writing House Whisperer, about 6-7 years ago, I actually came across the same thing described in the Vedic text. You know, Jan, you talked about the Mahabharata, but in the Vedic text, they talk about the net of Indra. And this is a shield, a structure that is there, and you can program it. So I teach how you can actually do that, and you can program it. It's a gold grid, you can use crystals, precious stones, and so on. So, so it's quite a powerful protection mechanism. But once you start understanding and learning the dynamics of these structures, you can get a sense of how they are running the show, how they're controlling humanity, and what part we have to play in actually cutting through that to get back to harmony, to the original light codes, by bypassing the fragmentation and the disharmony, which is surely what our work is with Feng Shui, you know, however, whatever aspects of it. So let me play you, there's so much more to the story, but in this 9-minute trailer, which was done actually nearly 2 years ago, and my niece Eleni put it together. She actually sings in it, and the orchestration is, you know, my nephew Adam. This 9-minute piece actually tells the entire story I'm trying to tell you in 20 minutes. It's contained in that. There is a lot more, but let me play it, and we'll see how that comes across. So.
The wisdom keepers awaiting where Cyrene resist the dark dust, stole the heart from Vesica, the golden ore. Come back to find the light goes, Christo.
Every night, I have the same dream. I I see the ones I've left behind, the family I long to return to. Her face, their voices, visions of a planet at war. My homeworld, Vesica, a once thriving utopia that only knew peace. Now, a deep darkness seeks to devour its light, and the knowledge we've safeguarded for millennia, it all turns to dust. I see things that have been, things that will be. My family, friends, I barely get to see their faces before the dark dust claims them, claims everything.
Krista.
It all feels like a lifetime ago. The life I needed to leave behind, to save. I journey now, for them, to preserve the harmony, balance, and beauty of my world. I'm strengthened by their love. I take it with me, and I send it back to them across the stars. My destination, Earth, a planet that mirrors our own, and so chosen to give safe haven to the harmonic light codes of our civilization until they could be regenerated and safely return to Vesica and restore its heart. Fragmented on impact, the light codes were scattered and now lie hidden across the farthest reaches of the Earth, calling out to be found and to become whole once again. I must find them. I cannot fail. I will not surrender the light of our world to those who seek to corrupt it. For whatever trials I may face, and no matter where my journey takes me, I will return.
Wonderful, Christian. What a
There we
journey
go.
you've taken us on. Very beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. And you know, essentially what we've got running, of course, is a love story throughout, because Christo meets his Lady of the Lake after he comes out of his initiation out of the cave, but she doesn't let on that she's actually come from the original planet Vesica to Earth by different means to help him. So he doesn't recognize her, but thinks possibly, and doesn't actually realize. She doesn't let on until much later on in the whole story. And the interesting thing is, her name is Sol, and that's my current partner's name. So we've, like, you know, come full circle 5 million years ago. And it's quite extraordinary to really sort of, and all the story in the book, I'd say 90% of it is written from memory and experience, putting together the history on Earth, because they meet, as I say, they meet Plato, Leonardo, because they all have a part to play in illustrating and using these light code knowledges, you know, through art, music, and so on. And as you mentioned, Jan, you know, Asclepius, you know, medicine at Epidavros. So it's like, where did they get that knowledge and inspiration from? So this is what it goes into detail. So yeah.
Christian, it was wonderful, and it's a lovely energy to complete on. We've had, let's just give Christian an enthusiastic, appreciative wave of applause.
Thank you.
You know, and good luck with that. That was fantastic. It's a lovely way to complete the day in such a creative, mind-blowing way. As much as all the information is interesting, it's lovely to take that journey with you and fly through the galaxy and fly through time. Thank you. Thank you. That's great. Well, the next time that we're going to be meeting is the potential to meet in person is June the 11th, as I mentioned. I don't know whether Vincent's still here. Vincent's actually also going to be speaking that day at Gardens. Amanda's speaking, Alexander's speaking, I think she's left, and I'm speaking, and Vicky will be putting together the announcement in the next week of the whole program. So we'd love to see you there. It would be great to have your feedback and comments. You can put them in the chat or email us about what your takeaways are from today, what you got, and whether you might like us to create more days like this. That would be good to know. And when we meet on June the 11th, I think we're also going to organise a social dinner in advance for Saturday nights, which will be bookable. So rather than shall we go out for dinner, we will arrange somewhere, a venue, hopefully our own room on that Saturday night, so that we can have some social time together on Saturday night rather than the Friday. Not all of you are so close to London, so if you can budget your time to do that, that would be great. So I think really it just remains for me to say thank you to all the contributors, for everybody who's been organising today, and for all of you for showing up, taking part. It's been great. I've enjoyed every minute of it, seeing you all and listening to the speakers. And I think we had, I think it was a nice format. I think we had some lovely input, and hopefully you've taken some good thoughts away from it. Anybody want to share a takeaway or what they've got while we're here? Anybody want to unmute?
Thank you, Gina, for curating the whole thing. So that was good.
Thank you, Gina.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, lovely. Great. And have you learned something today? Have you been enriched by our presentations today? We have the international sign of yes. The golden thumb.
Just been good to gather again and see everybody. Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah, it's nice to be, you know, a community where what pulls us together is this vibration, this frequency of looking at the patterns of the world and how they manifest in our lives and our homes, and helping people work with those. We've got I definitely think we've got our work cut out, because I think what is emerging is even if people don't have the language for what we're talking about, that they have an understanding which is wakening up. And so, you know, the imagery that we're seeing in movies like Christian's creating, we already see in the media, it helps for people to envisage something in the energetic world, even if they don't have vocabulary around it. And I think that's forming. And I think we are the bridges for helping people with that, creating vocabulary, bringing it home to people, and helping them to understand the power of home. I've just written another article for the House of Prayer Ministers magazine called Home as Heaven. The story about that and how we create our homes as heaven, because that's where heaven is. It's at home as much as it is out there. Yay. Well, if nobody has any more final thoughts or whatever, I'm going to let you get on with your Saturday afternoon. And again, thank you all for being here. We'll do a I'll stop recording now. Recording button. Stop recording.
I'd love to know what people thought of the project.
Your project?
Yeah.
People were saying in there that they thought it was wonderful, and they can